18 meeting of the Farragut Municipal Planning Commission to order, please. We're going to start out with the citizens forum. We ask that anybody who has any questions or comments that does not relate to any of the items on the agenda, you can ask that now. But if it's something that has to do with an item on the agenda, please wait till that item comes up. Does anybody on the Planning Commission have any questions or comments? Do we have any training coming up?
Well, we have one on August 2nd, and I got an email from the state floodplain coordinator. Some of y'all probably gone to this in the past. It's a 4-hour training program dealing with the national flood insurance provisions.
I did that once.
Yeah.
I don't need to do it again.
It's very, it's got a lot of information. It would be good. It's free. So, and I'll let y'all know when I find out where that's going to be, but it's scheduled to be in Knoxville on August 2nd.
And Active Knox is doing another session. I can't remember what it's on. It's, I think, making a community livable or something.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's good.
That information to you. You can send it
Yeah,
out.
that's good.
Any other questions or comments that aren't related to an item on the agenda? In that case, we'll move on to approval of the agenda. Any changes?
Any changes? Move to
No
approve.
changes in it.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Move on to approval of the minutes of the April 19th, 2018 meeting. Any changes with this?
Move to approve. Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? So also, I want to say at this time, if you want to get up and talk tonight, please fill out a blue card. There's a stack of little blue cards by the door. We need you to fill that out and hand this to Mr. Shipley here so we can have an idea of how many people we have that are asking to speak tonight. If we have a lot of people, we're going to have to limit the time to 5 minutes per speaker. And please, we ask too, don't repeat what the person in front of you said. We'll take a show of hands if we have a lot of people who want to make comments, but it's end up being the same thing. We'll take a show of hands and ask how many support the position of the speakers after we get to the end of it. But we do have a lot of people here tonight, and so we need to move along because we have a lot of items on the agenda too, but we want everybody to be able to have express their opinions. So in that case, we'll move on to item number 4, discussion and public hearing on an ordinance to establish the Neighborhoods Convenience Commercial District, NCC, Town of Farragut applicant.
This item was discussed last month as a workshop item. We've also talked about this at several planning commission meetings, and it's an item that also came about through the steering committee that we formed for the land use plan group that's trying to implement different strategies of our plan. So this, when we presented this ordinance last month, it was up for a vote at that time, but there was a couple of things that the Planning Commission asked the staff to go back and revisit. One of those was how we deal with residential uses in this zoning district. It is listed as a permitted use in this district. Again, this is kind of a scaled down, less intense version of the general commercial district. Smaller footprint buildings, try to have a little bit more attention to where a development like this would abut residential properties. It's kind of intended to be a transitional district between something that might be higher intensity or a major arterial street and a lower intensity use like a single family or two family residential development. So we took the comments that we received from last month and tried to create some revisions, which we sent to you in your packet that were in red. And just to go over a few of the major changes that we made, as you all may remember, there was some discussion about drive-through facilities. The original ordinance basically brought over the provisions in our mixed-use town center, and there was some concern that that might be a little bit too restrictive in this district. So we made adjustments to that to give it a little more flexibility, took out the requirement, for example, for one lane, and made the screening provisions a little less intense, and kind of, added a little more flexibility in terms of the drive-through lane in relation to front, side, and rear yards. And then we also took the residential use, and we are proposing that that would only be allowed as a transitional use. That would be part of a transition area plan that would be required as part of a development in this zoning district. Or you could have it also as part of a mixed-use building if it wasn't on the ground floor. Kind of related to that, something that we placed in this revised ordinance was some language that is a little bit similar to what we did recently in our subdivision regulations, where we were trying to address, have an applicant specifically address on their plans some important element of a development that the town is trying to promote. And since this district is kind of, as I mentioned earlier, intended to be kind of a transitional district, one of the things that we've added in here is a requirement for an applicant to present a transition area plan. And then that would basically talk about if they're going to use residential, it is an option as a transitional use, kind of like our land use plan talks about transitioning within a development. That's what we're trying to encourage with this language, so that someone could actually transition within the parcel itself, and it's a more seamless approach to the overall development of the property. So that's a key provision in the ordinance. And then we also added some additional protections for areas where this district would abut property zoned residential by limiting the size of buildings that could be within 75 feet of a peripheral property line in relation to residential. So that if you're abutting single-family residential, any building within 75 feet of that periphery cannot be greater than 5,000 square feet. So, again, what we're trying to do there is have a situation have some ordinance language that would prevent someone from coming right to the edge of the transition area and having a 25,000 square foot building against a residential development. So that's some of the key provisions that we added or changed in the revised ordinance. We also circulated a copy of that to the applicant that is coming up in a couple items later that's interested in rezoning the Swan Farm between Kingston Pike and Union Road. We've discussed in the past that property, because it is near large residential developments to the north, might be a good candidate for this neighborhood convenience commercial, rather than just allowing it to be developed with general commercial with, kind of very limited restrictions on size and, and those kinds of things. So we obtained some feedback from them, and most of the feedback we received was very minor. They did ask that financial institutions be specifically a permitted use in this district. And, really, if you look at it, we basically felt originally that that would fall under professional services, which was a permitted use in the original. But we have subsequently added that. It's not in your ordinance at your places, but we did add it in the final version that we would request to be approved, and it basically just states that financial and real estate services would be a permitted use. And that's language that is currently in our commercial and office zoning district, so it just parallels that language, and it's real clear that those type of uses would be specifically permitted in this zoning district. So the other thing that we did was added a little bit more flexibility to menu boards and just made the language such that they could not be visible from public rights of ways or adjacent properties that are zoned residential, because I think that's what we were trying to protect rather than an adjacent property that's zoned commercial. I don't know that they would be all that concerned about whether a menu board is visible or not. So basically that was all of the substantive changes that they suggested, and I think they were valid, and we do have those in the very latest version of this ordinance. Now, I guess at this point, if you all have any specific questions on those items or anything else, I'd be happy to try to answer that.
Have any questions?
So the financial is under section 24B?
Yeah, what we did was added that, basically added that as, it would become number 3, and then all the numbers after that would increase by 1.
Okay.
So we just added that as a line as a
What'd you
permitted
call it?
use.
Financial what?
It's financial and real estate services. And that's the same, like I said, that's the same language that we use in C1 or O1, so just to be consistent with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mark?
I'm sorry, do
Sorry,
you
go
have,
ahead, Rita.
do you have that in the copy that will be signed?
Yes, I do, yes.
I have a question for you,
Okay.
and I'm going to pull out Swan Farm and how it appears on our land use map as an example. Currently, after we amend the land use map, it'll have commercial in the front and residential on the back, which we are proposing as a transition area.
Yeah.
If we rezone all of Swan Farm neighborhood commercial, and their proposed idea it falls through, and somebody else comes in, and the whole thing is zoned neighborhood commercial, how do we tie our land use plan, make sure that we've tied our land use plan to that neighborhood commercial, so the next person coming in doesn't say, well, I can do whatever I want from the neighborhood?
Well, I think the next item on the agenda would help ensure that, or at least put in place in the future land use map, that the northern third of that property would be low-density residential, which would be the equivalent of a residential transition area in the convenience commercial, neighborhood commercial.
So
So
by
you
having
definitely
our,
would need to do that.
yeah, our land use
Because we don't
plan,
really have a land use category right now for neighborhood commercial.
I understand
It's just
that.
commercial.
yeah,
So
okay.
if you're concerned about that, I think the next agenda item would be something you should
But going
change.
forward, that land use plan can be utilized if somebody else comes along and says, no, I want to have commercial in the whole thing. We can say, we can look back at our land use plan and use that as no, you
Well,
can't
they
do
have to
that.
have that transition area plan
Okay.
because they abut property that's zoned residential. Union Road itself is zoned residential.
So they don't necessarily have to do residential then? They-
No, it could be one of the options.
Even
that-
though our land use plan calls for it to be residential? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean, that may require a change in the land use map again, if they
Okay.
ended up making that area more of an open space.
Okay.
Well, that's what we're doing in item 5, is
Well, I-
amending the land use plan.
Yeah.
Yes, we are. To low-density residential, what she's talking about is if somebody used a transition element that
Right.
wasn't residential,
Understand?
So-
Land use plan hold us to the residential?
let's change that land
What's
use
the first
plan
step?
back, because, open space may be a more desirable transition than residential. Residential may not end up being marketable on that
Okay.
north third of the property, so we could always amend that back if you wanted to do that.
But as long as, if we still find it desirable as a transition and we want to leave it that way, then they're kind of tied to what we're saying we want out of the land use plan.
Well,
That's
you
what
all
I'm
have a
asking.
lot of authority in reviewing this transition
Okay.
area plan.
Okay.
There's a lot of pretty clear language in there that you
Okay.
have the right to deny the site plan. It's kind of a little bit like a plan development, but it's not. I'm trying to make it more simple. But because this is a transitional district, I think having that transition area plan was something we came up with just because it just fit in with the objective of what this district's all about. That critical space between different land uses, that really is where community space is made or not made.
Yeah.
You know, you can either isolate and separate those from each other like we've done in the past in many locations, and lots of other places have, or you can try to protect the two but integrate them somehow. So that's what we're trying to provide for in this district.
And I have one more question. Residential uses in the list of uses, including both detached and attached single-family dwellings and apartment buildings not to exceed 8 units per acre. I'm just concerned in putting in apartment buildings, even if it's not to exceed 8 units per acre, I don't want us to run into the same problem we're having with a PCD where you're trying to put too much on too small a space and you end up with a big old parking lot. Does anyone else have that concern?
Well, we do have language in there. We are aware of that issue and concern, and that's why we've added a lot of language in that transition area plan section.
Okay.
That tries to address that. Now, if you all think that is inadequate or, you know, needs to be beefed up or something, that was what we were trying to do, was to allow some flexibility, but also give you guys a lot of authority to, when you're reviewing that transition area plan, to look at the surrounding plan of development. That's the whole point of it.
Okay.
To try to make sure that it's compatible with what you're transitioning from and to.
Okay.
At that
I thought
transitional
you all did a good
space.
job in describing what you did in item 2B, where you
Okay.
enumerated.
That's
all
what
of
we're
them.
trying, yeah,
Okay.
and that's what that was the concern we had as well. We don't want something to be completely incompatible next to a residential community. That's the last thing we want to have here.
To be pretty much
Yeah, it covers it.
covers it.
So what it does is it creates the primary use as being commercial, and the secondary transitional use is the residential use. And I think one of your concerns would be somebody would just come in and develop the entire site with 8 units per acre, and that would not meet the intent nor the requirements of this zoning. Because there was some language that Mark added that specifically says that is provided as developed as part of a transition area in this district, that was added in there to make sure that for some reason that didn't happen, that it just turned into all apartments.
Okay.
Says in 2B, the planning commission shall have authority to deny the site plan.
Yeah, we put that in there specifically because
Okay.
Anybody else up here have any questions or comments right now?
I'd make a motion to recommend approval of resolution PC 1806, recommend approval to ordinance 1803 with the modifications for the addition of the finance and real estate services and the comment on the menu board.
okay.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to item number 5, discussion and public hearing on a request to amend the future land use map for a portion of Swan property, parcel 54, tax map 151, 12639 Kingston Pike, from low open space to low-density residential.
Madam Chairman, my firm represents the Swan family in this transaction. I'll be stepping out of the room for this.
This future land use map, and this is kind of a raster version, it looks like, but anyway, when the rezoning request, the last time that we had a rezoning request back in January 2016, there was also a request at the same time to amend the future land use map, and the Planning Commission did make that change. The southern 2/3 basically was commercial land use, and then the northern 2/3 was changed to open space, which was consistent with the zoning district that you all ultimately recommended for that portion of the property. The rezoning didn't come to fruition, but the plan did change. So at this point, for there to be a development of the Swan property, if you are looking to have residential potentially as a transition on that northern third, then the request at this time is to actually go back to the original designation when the land use plan was updated in 2012. That northern third of the Swan property was low-density residential, and then the southern 2/3 was medium-density residential. So this is a request to go back to that, so it would change it from open space to low-density residential. And the staff recommends approval of this change to the future land use map.
Any questions or comments?
Yeah, use your marker mark to show how it connects with the residential density.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Draw a line, because it don't go through that purple area, isn't it?
No,
No,
no.
it's just that,
The purple
Just that-
area is a church.
just that blocked
Yeah,
off
just that
green
block that it's
portion.
got-
Here's the Swan property is kind of like
Oh, okay,
that.
gotcha.
So it's that upper area.
Yeah, the property to the west, where that's First Ferry at United Methodist, it's institutional, civic institutional.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I'm going to move to approve the amendment to the future land use map for the Swan property.
Second?
All those in favor? Opposed? Move on to item number 6, discussion and public hearing on request to rezone the Swan property, parcel 58, tax map 151, 12639 Kingston Pike, 28.76 acres from R-1, from R-2, R-1, and FPD to C1, R4, OS-P, and FPD, Site Incorporated applicant.
And we do have some people that have signed up for this, when we get to that point. Trying to cull those out here.
never rezoned.
But, well, this has been discussed a lot, and we most recently discussed it back last month. The applicant presented a booklet, what they're requesting for not only this property, but the Ivy property, which we'll talk about later. So at this point, they're requesting a formal recommendation on the zoning map amendment. What's on the screen is what the applicant originally requested. Most of the property right now is zoned R2. There's the floodplain overlay on the east side, and then you got a section of R1 that's remaining, that's actually mostly floodplain, that's on the east side of the creek. It's really wouldn't be part of any development that might occur on this property. And then a lot of the floodway is being rezoned to OSP. Of course, that's also in the floodplain district as well. OSP is Open Space Park, and that's, we totally support that. A lot of our floodplains, as they get rezoned, we always recommend to rezone those to the Open Space Park. You can still put greenways and things in there. There's certain things you can do, but it does restrict development. The staff would actually, based on our discussion of the neighborhood convenience commercial district, we feel that the areas that they showed to be rezoned to R4, that northern third of the property, and then the C1 on the southern 2/3, be rezoned to the neighborhood convenience commercial. That ordinance would be kind of running concurrent with the zoning map amendment, so they could all be addressed concurrently. We feel that is the best zoning district for the vision of that parcel. and we would recommend that that portion of the Swan property, the part that was R4 and C1, be rezoned to the neighborhood convenience commercial, and then we would also condition the rezoning on either the completion of Union Road or the construction of an extension of Way Station Trail from Kingston Pike to Union Road, so that all portions of any development that might occur on the Swan property would not be accessing an incomplete Union Road. They would have to access they'd have to access Kingston Pike or Way Station Trail extension, which would serve as a collector street when it's built, and those streets would meet the minimum design standards in the Farragut subdivision regulations. So we don't want a situation to come up where a developer thinks that they might end up developing the northern third of the property and feel like that they have access or should have access to Union Road. We want it to be a condition of the rezoning that either Union Road has to be improved or the Way Station Trail extension has to be constructed up to Union Road, so that anything that develops on this property would have access to a street that meets our minimum standards. Now, that Way Station Trail extension it would actually line up, obviously, with Way Station Trail that's on the south side of Kingston Pike. It probably would just veer over and follow the property line. I think there's a planned roundabout in this area that would also be part of, I think, what the applicant was proposing to construct. So with that condition, the staff would recommend approval of the rezoning as recommended by the staff, with the conditions noted. And then I've got a few people that have signed up as well to speak on this.
Well, I think we should probably make sure the applicant is agreeable to that.
I'm Robin Askew. I'm an attorney at Lewis Thomason. I represent the applicant in this case, 620 Market Street, Knoxville 37902. First of all, appreciate all of the work that the entire commission has put into looking at this globally with these pieces of property, and your staff, and I realize it's been a great effort, and I really appreciate it. We have taken a look at what's been proposed in the NCC zone, and we feel confident that it's the right thing for this piece of property, that it will work, it will be attractive, and as I've said before, when you have a zone that is like the NCC zone, it makes retail more inviting, and is something that is more of a town within a town concept. So I do want to say that we do support it. I know I presented a PowerPoint at the last workshop. I'm not going to do that to you again, but I will give this to Mr. Shipley for the record, because it's a copy of what we gave on that PowerPoint. But yes, we are in absolute agreement with this.
Thank you. Do we want to hear from the people first?
Oh, yeah, if you're ready. You
Right.
don't have any? I think I just had one that signed up for this specific item. I think it's Mike Rothman.
After him.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with
You
you.
give us your name, address.
Mike Rothman, 659 Burchard Boulevard, 37934.
Thank you.
Okay? I have one question to begin with, Mark. How many vacancies do we have right now in retail in the boundaries of Farragut?
I don't know.
Would you be surprised if there's over 50?
I really don't. I
Well, I can
don't
tell
know.
you, I counted them a couple months ago. Now, maybe you've had a thought. I served when the town began Mayor Leonard wanted to have a Chamber of Commerce. And I was elected to the board, and I was the first president for 3 years. And the town's is very positive as far as retail, but the whole emphasis of Farragut was that we want a town for the residents. We want a town that is not like, and this is a quote, Bearden, with nothing but asphalt and signs. And I have, certainly being a businessman myself, I have no consequence or disregard for not having businesses, but I'm real concerned about our changing this properties, any properties, not just this one, at this stage of the game until we fill the voids. I mean, we have a blight. You drive down Kingston Pike, if you go over into Turkey Creek. I read the April 26th Farragut Press. I understand that for this property that there's a proposal to have a grocery store, to have a restaurant, to have a bank, and 3 retail stores. Currently, in the Farragut area, we have five grocery stores, very good grocery stores. And then if you look at Walmart, which is not in our area, but a lot of our residents shop there, and Target, we have 7 grocery stores. My concern is we just hilly-nilly put out more, say we're going to have a bank, we're going to have another restaurant. We lost 5, 6 restaurants. Seasons moved, Audrey's left, Silver Spoon left, Gaddy's twice, and Musselman's. And I'm sure there's others. I'm not saying we shouldn't have more restaurants. I'm not saying we shouldn't maybe have a grocery store. I don't see the need to it at this stage, and I'm real concerned to the point of our having all these vacancies. I think that the town should put a moratorium on any new commercial construction or rezoning until such stage as we get, I'd like to see 80-85% vacant or fulfillment. I'd be satisfied with 50%, because I've seen these same facilities vacant for years, not months. I'm real concerned about what if you do pass this. What type of retail noise is Saddle Ridge going to have, and what kind of noise is Fox Run going to have? We were in the heat that we had to do some development for Everett Road so that Split Rail and the other general contractors could put up a McKinley station. Well, we have a freeway now, Everett Road, and the mayor in last year made mention about about the speeding on Kingston Pike. Well, we have posted a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit on Everett Road, and I guarantee you, town official cars also, there's no one going 30 miles per hour. Also, we had to have the walkways down there, and what do we have? We have either the yellow markers that you can't go or the barrels up because those have not been filled. I feel that it did not affect me, but I feel that in the haste of doing this without putting up proper landscaping, that there was a negative impact to those residents in Fox Run, Camden Grove, and Andover Place that butted up to Everett Road, because all they've got now is sound. There's no vegetation. So I'm just really concerned about the direction that the town is going. It seems like it's sort of like in Revelations when Jesus was talking about the churches. It seems like we've lost our direction a little bit. I think that maybe we need to have a little sit back, take a deep breath, and figure out really what we want for town. The whole premise of everybody coming out, and I'll be redundant and repeating, is we wanted a place, a neighborhood to come to raise our children, to have parks, to feel safe, and to enjoy the quality of life. And I don't think that I think that we have gone off track. I thank you for your time. And I would like to say that I read in the Farragut Press today that Mayor voted against the hotel bill, and he said I did what I thought was the right thing to do, and I hope that the mayor and this board and the aldermen will do what is right and preserve the quality of life for the residents of Farragut. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mark?
Not for that item, no.
Okay.
Oh, he may have some.
You
You have to go to the
Please,
microphone,
yes.
please.
I'm Brian Williams, 12860 High Oak Road, 37934. Mr. Shipley, you're talking about Union Road there, and you said something about you don't want the contractors to have any use to that until it's been improved. Is that correct?
Yeah, we wouldn't want to have any additional traffic on that road until it's improved, which the town is planning and working on that with.
And so one of the questions was going to be, what was the timeline on that?
Our town engineer probably would have a better answer for you on that. I think it's about 5 years for total completion, roughly. Yeah.
Okay.
They would still have an access, and that's what I was talking about with the way station trail extension. That's the whole point of that, is that they would have a direct access to a street that does meet our standards until Union Road gets improved.
But what you're talking about is basically go across Kingston over, like, whatever new road that would become that's what you're saying. Hey, I want to make a new road over here. I'm going to call it Way Station Trail Extension. But that's what you're talking about. Like, here's an access for these guys to be able to use to not go on the main.
That's one option, yes.
Do you mind illuminating what another option would be?
Finishing Union Road first.
Okay, but that's in 5 years.
That's the options that I see. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to add to that. Excuse me, there was a question about I'm sorry, I'm Darrell Smith.
Tell who you are.
Town engineer. There was a question about the schedule right now on the Union Road improvements. Right now, our consultant is looking at fall of 2019 for start of construction. I think that's fairly aggressive for where they are right now. I'm looking at probably more realistically spring of 2020 with completion in summer of 2021.
That's,
Got to have you at the microphone. You can't be heard at home.
I'm sorry. That's less than 5 years, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, I don't mean to be thick-headed, which is it? It's somewhere with this fall or the spring? I would assume if that's,
I'm looking at spring of 2020. For start of construction.
thank you, that's all right.
Any other people with questions?
I don't have anyone else that signed up on that item, no.
Thank you, Robin Askew again. I would like to just briefly address some of the comments made, first citizen comments made. First of all, there are vacancies, there's no question. That's because big boxes are dead. And under this zone that you have, there will be no boxes larger than 25,000 square feet. Your average Walgreens is 14 to 15,000 square feet to give some perspective, and so you can see where you're going there. So I wanted to point that out. With respect to grocery stores, I have been a real estate developer and an attorney for over 30 years. I have never gotten a grocery store to open or agree to go anywhere unless they had studied the demographics, usually for 18 months, and have looked at what are the new housing costs and who's moving there, what are their ages. So no grocery store is going to locate to this site unless the demographics support that. It's just not going to happen. When you look at the restaurants that he mentioned, I know that from personal experience, some of those were simply as a result of poor management or upheaval within the families that own those. Then you have others like Aubrey's where that's been reused, and it's a good thing. The speeding, I'm sorry, that's a law enforcement issue. I realize it happens. I'm guilty. But, that's an enforcement issue. And with the zone, the NCC zone, your landscaping is going to be taken care of. That's in what you just approved, for us to have the buffer, the greenery, the open space. And then with respect to contractors, I think we mentioned this during the workshop, and perhaps there are some citizens who weren't here. But as we mentioned, contractor traffic, we will move, any developer will move their big machines, the bulldozers, the bobcats and things. They're going to sit on site. They're not going to be moving daily. So it'd be simply the folks that are operating those machines going to and from the site. So that's it. I just wanted to respond to those. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I was referring to what we went through with Sweetbriar when not the construction, but the garbage trucks and the delivery trucks coming through there at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and rousing the citizens. And I have a question. Do you have a grocery store committed?
No,
So you've not done the demographics, correct?
I don't do them. The groceries do. They have
Okay,
internal real
all right.
estate.
Because we went through this dance a year and a half ago. And the grocery store that supposedly was going to come did not come because they had done that study. And I totally agree. Having been a businessman that put up a heck of a lot of businesses throughout, we do that. And I just question, I like progress. I'm a businessman. I like progress. But I want to see Farragut thrive again. We used to use Germantown as the benchmark. Well, I want to see us be the benchmark. I want us to be where everybody wants to come because we have great parks and we have great retail and we have great government. And that's all. I'm not anti anything. I just want to see us get back to where our forefathers who had the vision of Farragut gets us back to. And I think that we need to take a pause.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions or comments? Mark?
Have any?
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Thank you. Yeah.
What they were doing.
Do I have a motion?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the rezoning request for Swan property to NCC
Conditions?
with
For
the conditions.
C1, R4 portions that was.
This, yes, I'm sorry. The C1 R4 portions to NCC Open Space Park, is that, and the remaining R1 to remain R1?
Yeah, okay. With the
With the
condition of the road.
With the conditions, subject to the road being, that's the question I had. Binder is sufficient or final surface? What does that mean to you? Because I'd like that clarity.
Well, I think they need to have final surface.
Final
Yeah,
surface.
I think so. Yeah.
Are you guys all fine with that?
Yeah, I'd second it.
Okay.
Is that sufficient for you, Mark?
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Item number 7, discussion and public hearing on request for zones partial 52, 54, 54.01, 55, and 57, tax map 151, located at 12723, 12733, 12737, 12743, and 12751 Union Road. 115 acres from A and R-1 to R-1 OSR site incorporated applicant.
And I do have a few people that have signed up for this one. So, similar to the last item, this is also a piece of property that has been before you before. We most recently talked about this in April. The request at this time is to rezone the property to the open space residential district, overlay district. Most of the property currently is zoned agricultural. There is a small section in the southwest portion that's zoned R1, but they're requesting rezone the whole property OSR. The property, and I've been out on the property with Mr. Ivy many years ago. It has some drainages in there. It's really the way it lays to me, my professional opinion, the OSR is the best zoning district that we have for the characteristics of that property, and I think it would also be the best district for working better with the adjacent subdivisions, because you would have more open space and more ability to use those natural areas as your open spaces instead of having to develop more of the property, because you would have a district that would be more rigid than the OSR. With the substandard condition of Union Road we've all talked about, any rezoning of this property, the staff would recommend that would be conditioned on the Ivy property directly accessing a collector or arterial street that meets the minimum standards in our subdivision regulations. As I mentioned earlier, that could be the completion of Union Road, or it could be, at this point, an extension of Way Station Trail that would go from Kingston Pike into the Ivy property. That would mean the completion of the roundabout as well, so that property would have complete direct access to Kingston Pike without the need to use Union Road. Union Road, frankly, will be torn up quite a bit in the next few years, and it's probably going to be partially closed, if not completely closed, for different time frames. So the road that the applicant proposed last month from Way Station Trail into the Ivy property would be something that could be used both during that time, and then when Union Road is improved, it would be an additional way to get in and out of the development general area. So the staff does recommend approval of this rezoning for the reasons that we noted, but we would condition that on the property having direct access to a street that meets the minimum standards of our subdivision regulations. So with that, if y'all have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer those. And like I said, we do have a few people that have signed up for this.
They want to,
Mark, on the map, Mark, I think I see where the way station trail is, where it would come into the Ivy property, the extension.
Hard to see on this map,
Mm-hmm.
but we'd come in and, like I said, go over
Yeah,
to roughly that area, and there would be
roundabout there.
There's thought to be a roundabout there, and so that would be roughly where that would occur.
Okay, thank you.
so Mark, when the road development is done, where is that part of, is the whole Union Station from Everett all the way down to the west, how far west?
That road improvement, it goes all the way down, actually down Hobbs. It goes all the way down Union and then down Hobbs to Kingston Pike.
So Extension Road, how will people in some of the other areas get to the Extension Road to get out?
Well, they'll use Union Road. Is that what you're talking about?
Um,
Yeah, it'll be connected. All that will be connected. We'll also recommend, of course, when the Swan property develops, that they have a connector street to the west as well, to the church property. To try to get, again, more than one way to get in and out of places, like we've been talking about for a while, and then there's a variety of reasons that you would want to do that. So,
Mark, I'm going to recuse myself from the actual rezoning vote, but I do have a question. We do not have final approval from TDOT about the road design. Does that need to at least come in play with how we discuss this and when they can start? If this gets approved, do we need to make sure that we've had approval on the final design for Union Road first before they can start
yeah.
building?
I don't know if Daryl, if you have any more information on that or not, the town engineer, if you got some. I mean, I think it's pretty much a done deal, but yeah, we do have some modifications that we're going to be presenting to them on the design. But that is something that, this still has to go to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for 2 meetings, and that's certainly something that we need to think through and make sure that is far enough along for y'all to be comfortable with the rezoning.
I don't have an awful lot to add to that, but yes, it is correct. We are proposing a couple of design exceptions. One is the narrowed lanes on Union Road. The other, we're requesting permission to include 3 roundabouts on Union Road. One would be between the Swan property and the Ivy property. I don't have any final approval from TDOT yet, but
Conversations been favorable?
our
or they-
conversations have been positive.
Okay.
Daryl, while you're there, is the Union Road improvement stopping at Hobbs Road there to the west of Saddle Ridge Drive?
It'll come all the way
I'm
up.
not sure yet. In our description of the project, it included Hobbs Road to Kingston Pike. Once we have a real design on it, they're going to be looking at Hobbs Road to see if there are improvements needed to that, including maybe some improvements to the intersection at Kingston Pike.
Thank you.
Darrell, question. There's a lot of moving parts between these different projects and sequence of different phases.
Awful lot of moving parts, yes.
Have you all gotten a preliminary schedule of that you've had to do, or somebody doing that on your behalf? Because there's different parties involved too.
The
In other words, you have an integrated plan of sequence, because there's going to be
between-
obviously a way
between
that people
development
need
of these
to
properties and Union Road.
keep access for the residents to, and the way they're going to be able to access their subdivision or their property during these different pieces being developed.
Well, we're working on that, but no, I don't. I can't say that I have something perfectly figured out. Do you mean
I'm looking at
access
an integrated
into?
schedule that shows what's going to be blocked and when and that kind of thing that,
No,
you're
I don't
obviously
have
going to
that.
have to have something more
Not
concrete down the
anything
road. But if you
definite.
even have a preliminary idea of how that sequence is going to happen?
No.
Thank you.
I do know that Union Road is going to have to be closed to the east because of the bridge over Little Turkey Creek. There's no question while that's underway, the road will be closed. Could be closed for a good portion of the time that the roadway project is underway. There are alternate routes to get out to Kingston Pike. But no, we don't have a construction sequence yet.
Where are you thinking about 3 roundabouts? We know one.
We're looking at one here, one at Brochard Boulevard, and one at Saddle Ridge Drive.
And the last one?
Saddle Ridge Drive. So that each of those 3 major subdivisions will have a roundabout for access onto Union Road.
I'm just too much of a project manager not understanding you thought through the sequence of the and how
Any more questions for Daryl?
I will say this about the Swan, if the Swan Road, the road is built through Swan Road. I know for Mr. Dean, it would be very beneficial, once that bridge comes out, he will have access to Kingston Pike without having to go all the way up Union Road, which sounds like that'll be torn apart, and so there is an advantage to the Swan Road being finished for those.
Yes, if it's in
neighbors on
place
that side.
first, that will definitely open access to some of the property owners that are adjacent to
Yeah.
this property while the roadway project is underway. That's always something that is difficult. We always have to maintain access to everyone.
Yeah.
Sometimes
There
that's
will
easier
be a
said
way.
than done. There will be a way.
So, Mark, we have some, does anybody else on the planning commission have any questions?
Anybody else have any questions? for me or Daryl?
Hey, Ms. Okay, Mark?
Yeah, we have Brian Williams.
Do I need to restate?
I don't think so.
Thanks again. Can y'all just explain, and I'm sorry if y'all covered this sometime else and I was supposed to be here or whatever, I can't make all these. Can you explain what can happen if we rezone now as opposed to waiting for Union to be done? I don't know the mechanics of it, and I don't know, and it sounds like there is consideration, and my biggest thing is like Union Road is dangerous. There's not really a better way to put it. I mean, it's not the country road that it was, in my opinion, I mean, with Saddle Ridge and Fox Run, and then the people that are further down, I'm supposed to know it and I don't. But I'm being in Saddle Ridge, I'm just kind of extremely concerned. And I just don't know, like, I mean, I'm not trying to tell the Ivies that they can't do something, because I don't want to do that. But on the other hand, the thing I'm thinking is, man, the dump trucks and the construction vehicles and can't get theirs and the whole thing, like that, I would like to understand what would happen with this rezone that can't happen, like what, the order of things seems like a pretty important question. So I just want to kind of wrap my head around that.
Well, you realize the new road would be in place that gives them direct access to Kingston Pike. So before they could get all their construction traffic even in, they would have that new access through the Swan Farm. So I'm not
This is the
talking about for the development of the Ivy Farm.
thing through the Swan.
Well, you can call it the Swan Road, or you can the Way Station Trail extension, which I think is kind of a silly name, but it is Way Station Trail on the other side. But whatever the new name of that road is, so you'll have a new road that now connects a direct access from Kingston Pike over to Union Road.
Okay. So,
With a signal light. There will
Okay.
be a signal light there for
okay.
easy in.
But so what would stop a contractor from being like, yeah, but why don't I just go up Hobbs and hook a right, and then I'll just meander my way on over to wherever I'm going? How does that not happen? I guess is what I'm concerned, because, it's really a pain to try and take a left over there past the church and so on. Like, what's sometimes easier? The traffic and the timing seems easier. I'll just take a left on Hobbs, and then I'll take a right on the Union, and I'll be okay. They won't notice.
I'm not sure there's a way to prevent that without closing Union Road. I think common sense would prevail, and somebody say, I think I can get from point A to point B quicker by taking the new direct access instead of Hobbs Road and trying to make a turn and go down a narrow road. But you're exactly right. We can't prevent stupid.
Okay. So can we explain like what they're allowed to do with the rezone that they aren't allowed to do right now?
Well, one thing would be planning, as I would see it, Brian. If they know that it's rezoned to OSR, then certainly they can go about making a decent site plan.
Okay.
Well, and the Planning Commission has the authority through the subdivision regulations when they look at a concept plan or a preliminary plat. If the infrastructure is not to a condition that is ready for the density that's being added to the infrastructure, we can always deny those plans and plats. We have total control over that. So I don't think this Planning Commission is going to allow development to come in and it not be properly coordinated with adequate infrastructure for that development based on the density that is proposing at different stages. The development of that property will likely happen in multiple phases, and it will probably take several years pretty much to build out, just like Saddle Ridge and Fox Run. But I think we definitely, the Planning Commission, the staff, we want to make sure that the infrastructure is in place with each phase that they're proposing, so that there's not a situation that's unsafe or creating issues for existing residents that abut the property.
Okay.
There's going to be some disruption just in relation to the overall construction in the general area. Union Road construction is going to cause a lot of disruption.
I'm looking real forward to that.
But that's what it takes to take an unsafe road and make it something better.
Okay,
I don't
so
know if that answers your question. The way it's zoned right now, it's a 5-acre minimum lot size in agricultural. The OSR is based on a density of 20,000 square feet, less than half an acre. So it's a substantial increase in density from what you have out there right now.
And we need to move on. Your 5 minutes are up. So we have another next questioner.
I have Cynthia Galentine.
Good evening. I have some prepared comments, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak before you tonight. I'm going to keep my comments as brief as possible
We
out of
need your
respect.
name and your
I'm sorry.
address.
Yes, I'm going to do that. My name's Cynthia Galentine. I live at 237 Saddle Ridge Drive in Saddle Ridge, and I've lived there for 7 years. I was saying that I'm keeping my comments as brief as possible out of respect for your time and all the people here and the many issues that are on tonight's agenda. Since this rezoning request was made a little over a year ago, I, along with many other Saddle Ridge homeowners, have faithfully attended each of the Planning Commission's meetings where this issue has been introduced and discussed via workshops. I understand that the Commission plans to vote on this issue, and it appears that you guys are ready to approve the rezoning with minimal information, even subject to conditions. This is deeply concerning to me, and I imagine many Saddle Ridge residents, and I will explain why. First of all, very little information about the Ivy Farm development has been made public. This lack of transparency, as you can imagine, only fuels people's suspicions about what's being planned. The same issue exists for Union Road Improvement Project, which is going on concurrently and seems to go through endless planning, studies, and approvals. It is all very confusing to the public, and as such, many people have disengaged from these important issues that will deeply affect homeowners using Union Road for years to come. As I've scraped together whatever information I could gather from myself and Saddle Ridge homeowners, I've shared my information and encouraged homeowners to voice their opinions before this commission. I've not sent out alarming emails to scare everyone to death as I could have. Last summer, developer Travis Fuller, who's here tonight, met with approximately 35 Saddle Ridge homeowners to hold a Q&A about his preliminary plans for the development of the property. We appreciated Mr. Fuller offering to meet with us, but we got no assurance and very little hard information from him. The last 2 workshops here at the Commission provided no additional information to the public. When I asked questions of those on the Commission and the town of Farragut, no one seems to know for sure any plans by the developer, and it seems like it's okay. I understand it's not required for the developer to provide a concept plan until after the rezoning is approved, but the Commission can require additional information in order to make a well-informed decision. Back in February of this year, David Robinette of Site Inc. committed to provide a conceptual information to the Commission in the next meeting. This did not happen, and no one held him to this. To date, the only information provided publicly is the survey attached to the initial rezoning request that was submitted over a year ago. How can the Commission, in good conscience, approve rezoning to R1 OSR for such a large development, so different from the neighboring subdivisions, with so little information and a very complicated road project in the works? Quite honestly, I see the appeal of R1 OSR zoning for this property with its 35% open space requirement, because there will be an overall lower possible number of homes built and environmentally sensitive areas will remain more protected as required per open space areas. However, when I ask where exactly these environmentally sensitive areas are on the property, no one seems to have any details. How does that work? My biggest concern is the fact that there's no lot or home size minimums for this district. When I look at other R1 OSR subdivisions in Farragut, I see where the developers have primarily located their open space lots on the periphery of these developments, with homes clustered close together, not in keeping with neighboring subdivisions. I understand the need for more diverse housing options in Farragut, but off Union Road? I see these kind of developments closer to the center of town. I also noted no mature trees kept and homes looking very cookie cutter, which goes against the stated goals on the land use plan for this property. I've driven through McKinley Station, the Battery at Berkeley Park, and Briarstone subdivisions and admit they are presently very attractive. But these are very small subdivisions of 30 or so homes. Ivy Farm is supposed to be 9 times that. I doubt such a development would be quite as charming or attractive on such a large scale.
We need to wrap it up. You need to wrap it up. Your time is up.
While the developer has not indicated they would build out the subdivision this way, given the existing zone regulations, it could do so.
Thank you.
I would like to make a final comment.
Your time, I'm sorry, but we're keeping time, and your time is up.
Other people have had more than 5 minutes.
There's been other issues.
Yes.
Mark, do you have the next name?
Yeah, you can, I guess she can come on down if she
Okay.
wants. Now I have 2 more that have signed up.
While we're waiting, I'll keep talking. Last month
No,
during
please.
My name is Michelle Mulheim. I live in 227 Saddle Ridge Drive in Saddle Ridge. Last month during the FMPC workshop on this issue, one of the Ivy daughters made a lengthy impassioned speech imploring the commission to improve rezoning request. What does it say? With all due respect, her chief argument was to fulfill her father's dream of fulfilling a beautiful legacy to his daughters and the community, and how unfair the town has been to them for denying or delaying rezoning approvals. I truly sympathize with the Ivies. However, how fair is it to push this through the rezoning prematurely for one family versus the hundreds of families that will have to deal with this legacy, as it has been built at our expense for the next 2 to 10 years? How many Ivies actually live off of Union Road and will be affected negatively by this development? How many of you will be affected? I suspect none. Even Fox Run residents live east of the bridge and will have and will be able to avoid Ivy Farm or Union Road construction via quick access to Everett Road. Where was a balanced, honest argument made of the known Where was a balanced, honest argument made of the known publicly, I'm not sure what, made known publicly of the known adverse effects of such developments on the Ivy neighbors during construction of the roads? When have the Ivies attempted to meet with their neighbors over the years to discuss these issues except to complain that our residents are regularly trespassing on their property? Where was an appeal made with the data to back up the need for such a development co-occurring with the Union Road improvements projects? I believe approving the rezoning right now continues to be premature and will only complicate Union Road improvement issues. Nothing the developer has presented has addressed this problem other than proposing a roundabout solution, which only became known last month. It is extremely disappointing that the public was not made aware of 2 staff developer meetings since the last commission meeting. Thus, we were not privy to what was discussed, agreed upon, and cannot hold anyone accountable. Given the town's history with road projects, I do not feel very optimistic this will go well. Please do not approve a legacy that will likely be a nightmare for hundreds of people using Union Road in the interim. Commission, we the homeowners and voters will hold you responsible for this important decision. Please do not be overly swayed by one family's dream at the expense of hundreds of other homeowners. Lastly, please uphold your commitment to integrity, improving our road safety and infrastructure for existing homeowners in the area, and see it as a priority before all else. Do not allow threats for litigation by Site Incorporated and the developer and the financial parties interested in this deal to bully you into making this change and keep you from doing the right thing now. What does that
Thank
say?
you.
Thank you.
Mark, your next one.
Yeah, I have Warren Small.
Farragut for 28 years.
Got the seconds.
I'm Warren Small. My wife and I have lived at 415 Saddle Ridge Drive since 1995 when we built our home. The back of our property abuts the Ivy Farm. We would certainly urge you to reconsider rezoning as R2, which is the zoning of Saddle Ridge, instead of R1 OSR. This approach would avoid the potential for the flexibility in R1 OSR to result in a development that would be adverse to Saddle Ridge. My second and final point is the Union Road upgrading, which, according to a report of May 9th, 2018 by the town of Farragut, is that they're undergoing preliminary design. I recall town of Farragut capital plans for Union Road upgrading since the 1990s. that somehow never reached fruition. Therefore, until the design and the right-of-way phases of this project are completed and the construction phase is approved and fully funded, no building permits, except under existing zoning, should be issued. Otherwise, we face the real possibility of having the property developed with Union Road never being finished. Thank you.
Is that all?
I have one more, Gordon Michaels.
Gordon Michaels, 12913 Pecos Road, since 1994. I'm going to talk again with new information this time about the safety issue on Pecos Road. Again, everybody is focusing on the wrong road. Pecos Road is the road that I'm going to focus on in my comments. I think that when
Just a second, please. Is this,
Yes, this has to do with the connection into Ivy Farm, and
Haven't gotten to that point yet. This is just a rezoning, so it's
yeah,
really not. They could do that. They could
I'd
connect
like to ask for your
now.
forbearance when I make my comments. The original,
I just want to tell the planning commission that the connective part here that he's talking about is something that we are not considering at all with the rezoning. So be aware of that.
okay, the new information we had was the information presented to you last meeting, in which the developer's representative went over what their plan was. I think that when the connection into Pecos Road was first imagined and put into the plan, they assumed that there would be a central road down the Ivy Farm with residential roads going off of it, something like Saddle Ridge, and that the connection into Pecos Road would be a residential road. But the plan that was described was that all of the 200 plus 220 or 40 residences will be clumped at the back of the lot in the northern one-third of the lot. And there will be one way in and out of those clumps of residences, not two ways, one way, the access road. The access road will go down the lot and will be immediately adjacent. It'll be right on the border with Saddle Ridge. It'll come down. This is what was described last meeting, and it'll come down towards Union Road, and there will be a couple of feet to connect it to Pecos Road. Someone made a comment here that it would be just stupid to go through Saddle Ridge. It will not be stupid. It will be easier. It will for people that want to get out to Watt Road and onto the interstate. It will be the quickest, most direct way to do that. You won't have to wait at a traffic light, go through a traffic circle, go through a commercial zone. It'll be 40 seconds to a minute quicker, and people will do what they always do: is they'll take the quickest way out, and they will. What this plan makes Pecos Road is it makes it as an alternative front entrance, because Pecos Road is in front of all of the residences on the Ivy Farm. It's not some incidental side connection onto it. It's an alternative front entrance, and your plan requires them to have two access points. But what are you doing? What you're doing is you're concentrating all of your attention on whether Union Road is safe. Your staff person has talked very nobly about how they don't want traffic on Union Road until it's engineered to the point that it can accept it. What about Pecos Road? Where is the Pecos Road upgrade project? You're going to have a road that's going to be built initially, that's going to go along the side of the property. If it gets connected into Pecos Road, people are going to use that. Pecos Road has no sidewalks and no infrastructure, and the community usage of the road is completely inappropriate. There was a traffic accident on Pecos Road yesterday. A school bus sideswiped a car. That is the Grand Avenue and Boulevard that you're going to have as one of your two exits and access points out of into the Ivy Farm subdivision. The Ivy Farm subdivision needs to have two access points onto Union Road or two access points that come out of their houses, not a little connection
We need to-
onto Pecos.
Your
Okay.
time is up. Thank you. Again, for the Planning Commission, this is a matter that we will discuss when it comes to the concept plan and preliminary plats. It's not something we consider with rezoning. So this will no doubt come up again. But, and anybody who's interested in that, you can keep up online on the town's website. We'll tell you when these items are going to be on the agenda. It will be down the road quite a bit, probably.
I'm Mike Mulheim, 227 Saddle Ridge Drive, 37934. I totally agree with Gordon. It is a very relevant issue that he brought up on the rezoning, because your plat and your layout of your subdivision will change if you're R1 or the OSR1. So it is a very relevant issue, everything he brought up. So I think it is part of your decision for rezoning.
Is that all right?
Yeah, that's all that signed up for that item.
Okay.
Mhm.
Does anybody else, does the applicant have any questions or comments?
Thank you. I'll just briefly say that it's my understanding that Pecos Road is already designated for access to the Ivy Farm. It is, you could stub a road in today and cross it. Our preference would be to have a boulevard and not have to have two entrances. But if that's what the site plan approval calls for, then when we get to that stage, which is not where we are now, we're only rezoning this acreage, then it can be discussed. But it seems to me that the concerns about Pecos Road would be better suited for the homeowners to appeal to the commission to close it. So,
Thank you. You got,
Chris Petzel, I live in Saddle Ridge, 12801 Lodgepole Lane. I agree with many of the comments here. It seems maybe the full plan is not understood by the public, or even the fact that we keep talking Union Road, different things about Union Road, and there is no guarantee from TDOT of the acceptance of the plan quite yet. And just one further comment about the developer and Pecos Road. When he came to our subdivision, he stated, I don't want to come through you guys at all. I don't want any traffic through you. I want to put two entrances onto Union Road. So that's how it was, brought to our subdivision. Thank you very much.
thank you.
I do have one more that Andrew Lupin, yes it is.
Hi, I'm Andy Lupini, and I'm 12805 Pecos Road, and I back onto Ivy Farm as well. And I do want to reiterate that the access from Pecos Road is an integral part of this. I want to emphasize the accident with the school bus, and that there's a lot of foot traffic down there to and from the pool. So if you open that, you are going to be killing someone. And it's up to you if you want to make that choice.
Anybody else on the
I
planning
don't
commission
have
have any
any-
questions or comments? And do I have a motion?
I move for approval of the resolution PC 1811, which recommends approval of ordinance 1810 subject to the conditions that are stated relative to the completion of Union Road improvements or the construction of the extension of Way Station Trail. In the roundabout.
Second?
I second.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Oppose?
I
Ju-
recuse
just-
myself.
Just as a procedural thing, they just make a recommendation on a rezoning, so it does go to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. They have the final say. So, I just make you aware of that. 'Cause it's come up before where people have thought that this was the final action, so.
And you can check on the town's website and the agenda, and it will tell you when that will be before the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Move on to item number 8, discussion and public hearing on request to rezone parcel 12, tax map 162, 801 McPhee Road, 20.267 acres from R-2 to R1-OSR Homestead Land Holdings LLC. And hold off just a minute and let these folks get
Just
out.
a minute, yeah. Yep. Oh, yeah, thank you.
Start.
Okay, you ready?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Think
Yeah,
it's a
this
little
was
quieter now.
discussed last month as a workshop item as well. This is a little over 20-acre tract off McPhee Road. It's north of McPhee Park and south of McPhee Manor. It's kind of a long, obviously rectangular shaped piece of property. The request at this time is the property zone, as you can see there, R2 currently, which is the same zoning as McPhee Manor. The request is to rezone that to open space residential. The property is about 2/3 wooded. The first third, the eastern third, is a smaller, kind of scrubbier tree cover, but pretty much the western 2/3 of it is nice hardwood land. So the open space residential would offer relatively more protection than if someone were to come in and develop it under its current zoning of R2 because of the flexibility in lot sizes and lot width, frontages, and setbacks and things like that. So as we'll look at their concept plan later, but they have a fairly sizable open space area in the western portion. There's a stream that runs through there, relatively steep slopes in that area as well. So the staff does feel that the open space residential is the best zoning district for this property and its characteristics, and would recommend approval of Resolution PC 1807, which recommends approval of Ordinance 1806.
Anybody have any questions for Mark before we get started any further?
The only access would be to McPhee Road, Mark?
Yeah, we'll talk about that when we look at their concept plan. They are requesting a variance on that.
I'm Russ Rackley with Rackley Engineering, PO Box 30456, Knoxville. Here representing the applicant. We agree with staff. We do feel that this is the best down zoning, reducing the density, but allowing us the flexibility to achieve some yield on it and still protect the majority of the steep wooded slopes in the back by leaving them in open spaces is the best thing for this property and for this area here next to the park. We respectfully ask for your approval in recommending the rezoning to Board of Mayor and Alderman.
I think we talked about this the last time, Mark, about the slope on the property. Do you have numbers on that?
Well, there's some areas in the western part that are over 15%.
Wow.
And there's a drainage way that runs through there kind of diagonally through the far western end. So and they are showing that on the concept plan as part of their open space.
Anybody have any questions or comments? Anybody on the planning
Move
commission?
to
have any-
approve Resolution PC-18-07, which recommends approval of Ordinance 18-06.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay.
Next item for discussion is approval of a preliminary plan for Virtue Road from 2,200 feet south of Broadwood Drive to 700 feet south of Kingston Pike, Town of Farragut applicant.
Good evening. Again, I'm Darrell Smith, Town Engineer. I'll get that right this time. This next item is approval of preliminary plans for Virtue Road. You'll recall that our board last year identified Virtue Road as a major priority project for the town. The idea is over time to improve Virtue Road from Kingston Pike all the way to Boyd Station Road and then Boyd Station through to the town limits. The first phase of this project is what's before you tonight. I've actually got begin and end upside down from the way the project plans show, but this extends from 700 feet south of Kingston Pike to just south of the Harville tract. You can see it on this map here. It's takes it through what I call the S curves. I think we're all familiar with that. Two kind of tight curves. The idea is to improve this to two 12-foot lanes with curb and gutter, a 12-foot multi-use path on the east side with an 8-foot green strip between the back curb and the path. Now, as the project bends around the Sugarwood, the back of Sugarwood properties, that greenway will narrow to 10 feet with a 6-foot grass strip. Now, our standard, what we're pushing for these multi-use paths, is a 12-foot path. That's a TDOT standard with a minimum 10 if there's reason to try to make it a little narrower to reduce the impact properties. Now, back last year, we brought Vaughn and Melton, local consulting firm, into the picture. They've been working on plans. I think they've done an excellent job at balancing the impact to the adjacent properties. Jason Elliott is with us tonight. Jason, I'll turn it over to you. If you have any other questions, just let me know.
Is it going to work for you? I can forward it if not.
No, it's not advancing. Oh, there it goes. Did you do
Well,
that
I
or
did
me?
that, yeah.
Okay.
Just look over here and I'll move it back and
I'm
forth.
Jason Elliott. I'm an engineer with Vaughn and Melton, and as Darrell stated, we are the designers for the Virtue Road project.
Can you give us an address?
It's 1909 Ayler Avenue, Knoxville. That's our office.
Thank you.
Probably feels like it's
Quite.
A lot of PEs do.
So I've given you a handout, and basically what I want to do is just go over what the objectives of the project are and how we are achieving those objectives. There were essentially 5 primary objectives of the design intent. The first one being to widen the travel lanes. If you look at your top left typical roadway section, that's the existing conditions. The existing lanes are on average about 10 foot, 9 inches wide, and we are wanting to go to 12-foot lanes. So that was the first, just to widen the travel lanes a little bit by a little over a foot. The second was to add the shared use path that Darrell referred to. This is so it can be used by both pedestrians and bicyclists, and it's being proposed on the east side for several reasons. The main reason is that there's about an additional 12 feet of existing right-of-way on the east side. So if you measured from the center line of the existing road to the right-of-way on the golf course side, it's about, give or take, 18 feet in most places. And then on the Sugarwood side, it's about 30 feet. So we do have that additional right-of-way space to provide this shared use path. The
The third objective is to go to a curb and gutter drainage system, a closed system, thereby eliminating the drainage ditches and culverts out there. That should read 5 storm sewer outfalls where the water leaves the project site, and all of those outfalls are not in developed areas. They are in wooded areas. Then the fourth is to raise the profile of the road. There's a series of culverts, pipes out there. They're small pipes, and the road gets fairly low in that area. It's at the south of the Harville property. And in larger rain events, the road overtops. It floods, essentially. And so what we're proposing there is to raise that profile of the road about 2.5 feet and use some bigger box culverts to convey that water under the road so you don't get that flooding issue anymore. And then the last objective is to flatten out those S curves that Daryl referred to. The existing curves, the degree of curvature on those accommodates about a 20 mile per hour vehicle speed, whereas the proposed curves under the current plan are designed for 35. I wanted to go through the 3 proposed typical sections on this sheet. The one in the bottom left is for the first, and let me just tell you, when you're looking at these, you're facing south. So Sugarwood's on the left, the golf course is on the right. That first one in the bottom left is for about the first 660 feet of the project. It runs to about the edge of the wooded area. So you have the detention pond in front of the pool, and then that wooded area next to it. So that's where we have the wider 12-foot path with the 8-foot grass strip. And then as you approach the Sugarwood yards that are developed, it changes to that section in the top right, which is the 10-foot path with the 6-foot grass strip. And we did that essentially to minimize the impact. Our main goal was to stay outside of existing fence lines on both sides of the road. And that did accomplish that with the help of the use of some short retaining walls and some 3-to-1 slopes. And then the last section in the bottom right is once you get south of Little Turkey Creek, the shared use path veers off and temporarily ends until the developer of that Harville property picks it up and continues it. So that's why you don't see a shared use path on that bottom right section.
Let me go to the next.
Anybody,
Pardon?
is that it?
Not really, but I can end it there if you want.
Go ahead. You breathed. So.
One thing that town staff asked us to do while we were trying to accomplish all these things is to minimize the impact to all property owners out there. And we did that. Well, we've done it to a certain degree. There are obviously impacts to properties. With a project of this size, it's almost unavoidable. But to try and achieve that, what we did was we maintained the existing roadway center line and profile, which minimized the grading. And then we did use short retaining walls, I think a total of 6. And what that does is it just keeps your grading limits closer in by using walls rather than cut and fill slopes. And then the third was just we were trying to fit the proposed improvements inside the existing right-of-way, wherever we could. And it wasn't always possible, but it was possible about 95% of the time for the project length. And then I'll just end by, there's a few other things to note, that the bridge over Little Turkey Creek obviously will need to be replaced to accommodate the shared use path. it'll be a wider bridge. And then I already mentioned the fact that the shared use path is ending on the south side of the creek there. We talked about the project limits, and then lastly, the power poles owned by LCB several of them will need to be relocated, as they will be right in the middle of the proposed shared use path. So I think it's about 4 or 5 will have to be relocated. And we have not began discussion with utilities yet. We wanted to wait until after this meeting. Now I'm done.
Now you're doing, okay.
Some people that have signed up when you're
Okay,
ready.
let's see if anybody on the Planning Commission has some questions first for him.
I have more of a statement. This is our road. We're fixing this, right? Well, improve. I can't even say we're improving it. It's already a fast road at 50 miles per hour, and I know, Darryl, I'm going to drive you nuts right now. We are putting a walking path 8 feet away from cars traveling 50 miles per hour. Car makes a mistake, you're dead at 50 miles per hour. And I suspect with the 12-foot lanes, it'll go maybe a little faster. I mean, they're pretty maxed out. I know the speed limit was set at 30. Speed limit's at 30 on Everett Road, and you try to go 30 on Everett Road and you feel like you're driving 10 because of the design of the road. Now, I can't say that Virtue Road's a little different than Everett Road, but we're still building a road that's very fast that we haven't figured out how to put in any traffic calming. Is there a possibility for traffic calming? How do you accomplish that? But there is no protection for pedestrians on that road, and if we're going to continue to build pedestrian facilities, it has to be part of the road. It can't be secondary thought. It can't be an afterthought. It has to be part of the design process. How are we going to slow down cars or encourage people to go a little bit slower on these roads that we are improving? Because we've built McPhee Road, and it's a very fast road, and we've built Everett Road, and it's a very fast road, and we've put pedestrian facilities within, 3 feet in those conditions. I don't specifically have the answer. I'm not a road engineer, designer, but I know that we are not making that walkable. We're not making it a walkable condition, and quite frankly, we're making it a very frightening place to want to walk. The best place here is when it's pulled off the road, and in front of Virtue, in front of the farm. When that develops, they'll pull that off, and it'll be, you'll have a lot of space. So that will be a nice place to walk. The bridge really concerns me because we bring it right in on the bridge. Will we have some separation between where people are walking and the bridge? Because we know that people have had issues with the current bridge and accidents on that bridge. I don't know that I have a solution. I'm just very concerned that we keep doing the same thing over and over. And we just seem to be creating very fast roads.
Have we evaluated any candidate sites for roundabouts?
We have not.
I mean, would that be something that maybe we could look at? Because I think the roundabouts do a great job of traffic calming.
You mean using a traffic circle where there's not necessarily an intersection?
No, I wouldn't advocate that. But I'm thinking, maybe at the new entrance of the new subdivision at the Harville Farm might be a natural location for a traffic circle. And that's kind of in the middle of this big distance between the straightaway in front of Vista and all the way down to Kingston Pike and Virtue Road. And that might be a good location to help slow down some traffic as they're going through there. And that's kind of a straightaway, and maybe it'll get them to slow down from 50 to 30, and they go through the traffic circle and they probably speed back up. But nevertheless, I think it seems like that would be a natural, just like what we talked about tonight on Union Road, is having some locations for subdivisions where a traffic circle. I don't think putting a traffic circle just in the middle of nowhere makes any sense. I'd like to use them for the purpose they were designed.
They're not effective on McPhee. The one.
I mean, I slow down when I go through the traffic circles on McPhee. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, do people speed back up?
Some people just go straight over because of the curb on the circle, and you can just go straight over it. But
truck-
I know
the
the
truck
intention there was to have some entrance into a subdivision at that point, and then they just didn't design it that way, but.
You still got to go around it. You can't just drive through the landscaping in the middle. I mean, maybe I guess some kid on four-wheel drive truck might, but my thought is, are there other tools in the tool bag that we could look at for traffic calming?
There's a lot of different devices that can be used. It's just applying them in the correct location. But we can explore that for sure. We've heard before that speed is a problem. It's not the first time. The other thing that we can look at is barriers between pedestrian and vehicle, especially on the bridge.
What's the length of this total project?
It's about 3,700 feet, about 0.70 miles.
Okay. And this is a curiosity question. What kind of medium will you use to raise the elevation on that third objective?
What kind of?
Will you use? What kind of material will be used to raise the elevation on your third objective there?
It will be a complete.
The fourth objective, I guess it was. Yeah, fourth objective.
On the area where it floods now, to raise that roadbed up.
Where it's too low now and it floods.
Assuming whatever fill material the contractor can make available.
It'll be a complete roadway reconstruction, and they will use imported fill and then regular roadway base material and asphalt.
So it's going to be something that's not going to settle. A considerable amount then.
They're required compaction requirements for the construction, and it will be inspected by a construction inspector.
Anybody else have any questions?
I'm just going to add just a little bit more to this. And I know that you guys, and I'm saying this, and I think we might be able to have time to get to it 2 years from now. When we update I think we need to update our pedestrian bicycle plan to include pedestrian bicycle road plan, so that when we're doing road projects, we are addressing the pedestrian aspect of it in the whole design, that is a consideration that is equal in value to making sure that we're making it safe for cars. We're also making it safe for pedestrians. I think right now we have those policies separate, and they tend to we tend to forget that we're trying to make our community pedestrian friendly as well.
I think we've come leaps and bounds in 30 years of trying to come up with ways to circulate kids on bicycles and strollers and folks out jogging. If you think about all the sidewalks that are right on Kingston Pike with no separation, and we started to figure out a way to adopt some separation, ideally grass strips, and for some years it was 3 feet of grass, and then it grew to 5, and now we're ideally trying to get 8 or 10 where we can. But I really applaud the staff and the design on this, because it's difficult to meet all these demands of everything. So I think we're doing a really good job. I think that it's hard to have it perfect in every environment. I'm not sure I would want to see a barricade out there that separates the bike path from the road. I think that kind of defeats the purpose. I don't think the taxpayers want to pay for it. I don't think it can eliminate every possible traffic issue where somebody's going to jump the curb and run somebody over. But I do think you've done a good job of trying to figure out a way to separate it. And I'm not sure how to separate it any more than we already have without really encroaching into either the folks that live in Sugarwood, which probably wouldn't be too happy about us putting these bike paths now on their side of the fence, or the golf course. But I think
And I don't disagree with you. I appreciate that you've added some traffic calming ideas into it. That's what I'm pushing for, is when we're looking at our road projects, that we are considering that we're trying to slow down traffic for a very good reason, because we have created a really great pedestrian circulation system over the years. We've stuck with our vision, and that's what's keeping Farragut relevant. But let's go the extra mile and make sure that when we're looking at road projects, particularly ones we're paying for, that we're exploring every opportunity we can to calm traffic too, because we understand that people drive fast, and that just seems to be the nature of the beast. And if there's a possibility to put in traffic calming, we should be exploring those opportunities. That's all
I agree.
And I'll just add, and then I'll sit down. I work with a lot of different municipalities, and town of Farragut has much wider separation than any other I've seen with the 10-foot and 8-foot grass strip. That's, to me, that's going above and beyond just by itself. But there's additional things that we can do too.
Okay.
So.
I appreciate that.
I don't disagree with the objective you're expressing, Louise, but I think there is an economic factor that has to be considered, definitely.
People that have signed up when you're.
I have a comment. I'd like to see the separation, what you can do to have the barrier concept in that bridge. That bridge is in a kind of a straight section too, and so that's going to be.
Can you say that one more time?
I think you ought to look at a barrier concept integrated with that bridge because of where the location of that bridge is in particular is on a straight stretch.
And that's done frequently. It's usually some kind of concrete barrier wall. I've seen guardrail used, but it's kind of
I would want to see a guardrail.
unattractive.
Yeah.
So in this particular, at the bridge, we actually have the bike path up against the back curb. Is that what's going on there?
That is, and that's just to minimize the width of the bridge. There is no separation between the curb and the path.
And that is an area that bikers will.
It's a pinch point, and I think that, and it's not, it is a really straight section too, so there's going to, there will be speeding. That would be an area of concern for safety for me.
And a definite area that bike riders will use through there.
Absolutely.
Any other questions right now from the planning commission? Okay, Mark, we have some.
Yeah, we
people
have
who
some
wish to
people
speak.
that have signed up. I have Jim Anderson.
And again, we'll remind you, 5 minutes, please.
Jim Anderson, Butternut Circle in Farragut. I'm on the corner of Broadwood and Virtue, which is, I'm the family that's going to take the brunt of the moving and losing of the property.
You always have the pretty rose bushes in the backyard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, somebody referred to me earlier as the white fence. We're the white fence.
Yeah.
But that was the people with the black fence, so we're all good now. So. What I have is basically a bunch of questions. Obviously, I'm not real happy with losing some of the right-of-way, losing some of the property, having more people in a wider area back behind our house. I really don't understand why it needs to be completed. I know it's got a long-term vision in there, but I've never really heard why there's a long-term vision for that area. I don't necessarily need to know now because I don't want to give up my 5 minutes. Want to move on to my next question would be, why does the walkway need to be 10 feet? The current walkway is 5 feet. The new walkway where the NHC area was just created was 5 feet. And if I'm not mistaken, it looks like it's planned to be 5 feet in front of the new development in front of the golf course. I think that's going to be 5 feet. So why are we at 10 feet? I understand, I appreciate the going from 12 to 10, but I don't understand the reasoning for doubling the area that it's connecting to. So, again, moving on so I don't lose my time. The way Daryl was gracious enough to let me have copies of the drawings. I had them printed out. I've been studying them. I'm not a roadway engineer. I am a degreed engineer. Been one for about 30 years, or coming up on 30 years, a lot longer than what I thought I was going to be. But anyway, I have been studying it and looking at it. It looks like there's 9 family residents that are going to be affected as opposed to one golf course. Blows my mind. I don't understand this. I agree with the gentleman that was speaking earlier tonight that was saying that Farragut is a town for families, for a good place to live, a good place to raise a family, a good place to have your residence. So what I see us doing is basically make a decision to move 9 families. Taking some of them are very very minor impacts, but they're impacts to the family, impacts to people who live there, as opposed to one golf course. I used to play golf a lot. I was never that good, but I did get a hole-in-one once. I'll give you that. But it's a golf course, and it's not. It is going to be more impactful on that side of the road, guaranteed. I think the engineering team did a good job in minimizing total impact to everybody. But look at it, you're looking at between families and between the golf course. I think the families need to be considered at a higher level than the golf course. That's just my opinion. Straightening the road, the S-curve, I don't think that's a good idea. You know, I heard the gentleman say it's 20 miles an hour through there now, and it's going to allow 35 miles an hour after the fact. Well, we're already 50 miles an hour, and I was going to make that statement at my house. I guarantee you the average speed is at least high 40s, low 50s in that area. You're going to go in that S-curve from 20 miles an hour to 35 miles an hour. That's an increase of 15 miles an hour. Okay, on average, you're going to go, what, a quarter mile up the road? You're going to be adding at least 10 miles. So if we're at 50, we're going to be at 60. It's a dangerous, dangerous area already. There's already been, just outside the development area, there's already been 2 deaths where people had fought, ran off the road. I don't think it's a good idea to do that. I mean, without some type of traffic calming, traffic stopping, I'm not, again, a roadway engineer, speed bumps, traffic circles, I don't know much about any of that. But I know that if you make it available to go faster, they will go faster. It's going to happen, and especially with a walking path right next to it. Trying to move on quick here. Power utilities. There's no plan for power utilities. This is a big concern for me, and I think many of my neighbors. We're moving the things around by almost 20 feet, so that tells me that the power pole that's already right next to my backyard is going to move 20 feet more into my backyard and my neighbors, and then I'm not sure, but I think it's like a 10-foot span for the power for the wires. But then those are going to be also encroaching into the family properties. I don't think this is a good idea right now for this town. I don't think it's a good idea for Sugarwood, certainly, and I really don't understand why we're not looking more at the golf course. I'm really flabbergasted why we've not doing that. So I would like to ask a direct question. Is I know that I know when they do the work in at least one area in my property, we've got to relocate all or some of our fence. Is that the same for all fences that are going to be there? Like the black fence family. I hate to say it that way, but. I don't know. I don't know. 2 doors down, are they going to have to relocate their fence? Do I have to relocate my fence?
No fences are being impacted. Originally, there was about 50 feet of your fence that I was saying had to be moved. Since we had our conversation, we've looked at putting a short curb wall in there to keep your fence where it is now.
But does it have to be moved while you do the work? I mean, I'm going to have to move it and then put it back.
They're going to have to move it and put it back to build that wall.
And when it's moved, is it still a fence?
It's still a fence.
Okay, I mean, they're going to close it off. I've got a little dog that likes to yap at everybody, so.
Yeah, they'll still make sure it's an enclosed area. They'll have to move it back to get the wall built, and then they'll put it back where it is now.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go back to one more question I don't think I really got answered. The power. It's a big deal. We need to have a plan. Before you guys go forward on something like this, we're going to affect 9 families. It's a big deal to move that power into our backyards, into our family area. I would urge you to at least find out where that's going to go. I mean, I think at least that ought to be considered to be going across the road. So,
Thank you.
thanks.
Daryl, you got some answers there?
I'm not sure I can remember all the commission.
Well, is the LCB power poles, are they going to stay in the right of way, or are they going to have to acquire new easements for the electricity?
They're at the edge of the right of way now, pretty much on the property lines.
Okay.
Property lines are, for the most part, staying pretty consistently in the same place. There's surprisingly to me, very little actual right-of-way acquisition off the properties. I've got a preliminary list here. Let's see. Mr. Anderson, it appears that with this design as it is, we are currently looking at 59 square feet of right-of-way acquisition.
Okay.
If we can tweak this a little bit, we may be able to get that down to 0. There's also slope and construction easements. I know there was a question about moving the fence. Now, we've done this different ways. We can either include it in the actual project, where the contractor is responsible to have someone move a fence for someone. But we've also done it during the right-of-way acquisition phase. Property owners are paid a certain amount of money. We get estimates to have an actual fence company move it temporarily and then move it back. It's a little bit cumbersome, but it works. And you have professionals doing the work, so that's not a major issue. But I would point out, as far as the LCUB poles that are out there, they're pretty much at the edge of right-of-way now. They will likely need to be moved. They may be moved. I don't know. I would have to listen to Jason on this. They would probably be moved to the back of the greenway.
Well, if they're on the edge of the right-of-way.
They would still be within a utility easement.
Okay.
That's out there. I mean,
Right.
there is a 10-foot utility
Right.
easement.
Along all the property lines.
Beyond the right-of-way line.
Right.
If you move,
Preferably not inside the fence, but we're going to see what we can do. Right now, we just don't have a plan with LCB. It's a little preliminary to, it's a little early to be talking with them, but that will be the next discussion.
Would it be unorthodox to have those poles between the greenway and the road?
That could be done.
Obviously, it would
through
inhibit
this
us
area,
if we ever
there's-
widen the road again in 50 years, then we're going to have to move them again. But my thought would be maybe that's something to look at. And that way, that might, you also might have some, that would create a little bit of visual separation between the walking trail or the multi-use path
Right.
and the roadbed. And we've done this. Sometimes we've
Absolutely.
routed,
Right.
we have some at Renaissance, so where the
We have
sidewalks
some
on the
on
back
Kingston
side,
Pike that are-
on the
are-
back side of the what we call telephone poles.
Right. We can look at that. Might provide a little bit of separation. Certainly, if you're in a
Now,
car.
obviously, if there's guy wires involved, that's going to be a challenge. I mean, that you end up, I'd have to look at some of the curves and so forth, or the engineers would need to look at it. But that might be an alternative, is to place those between the multi-use path and the back of curb. Assuming there's not a bunch of there may be underground gas lines or water lines, some other things that's going to,
Right.
get in the way of those poles. I don't know.
But, no, as far as, and I know the question has come up during our public hearing. There's a golf course on one side, and there are 9 residences that are affected on the east side. The golf course is, we're looking at, let me see here, area to be acquired, 1,325 square feet of right-of-way. That's fee simple acquisition. That's still pretty small from the golf course. But slope easement is 0.111 acres. What is that, 4,000 square feet?
4,000 square feet.
Again, it's a limited amount. I really have to applaud Bond and Melton on this. They've done a very good job of trying to balance the impact between left and right side of the road.
Pretty much following the center line of asphalt where it is today.
Right. It's surprising to
Yeah.
me. But the thing that I think we all need to understand, that since the golf course has really never been replatted, they have never had to dedicate right-of-way. The right-of-way is a lot closer on that side of the road.
Right.
It's about 18 feet off the center line, whereas on the Sugarwood side, it's about 30 feet from the center line.
I just have a question, and this is probably a dumb question, but if the pole is moved within the right-of-way, can it be on the end, or does that move the right-of-way?
I'm sorry?
LCUB. You
Right.
said you could move it within the right-of-way. Does the right-of-way remain the same?
It does. It does.
So you can put it on the edge and you still got the right-of-way?
Right. Typically, they try to be just right at the edge of the right-of-way, just to be a little farther, as far as they can be away from the road. But with this, there's a little bit of room to move things around a little bit.
So the poles are not actually going to be in private property lines inside of a homeowner's private property.
No, they have to be.
It's all in right-of-way.
Well, if they are, there is a 10-foot utility easement out beyond the right-of-way line that is within the private property lines.
Okay.
Now,
Possible, I mean, but there's a platted easement.
It's possible.
that's
We
been
would
there.
prefer not to, and I'm sure the property owners would feel the same way.
Okay.
LCUB wouldn't consider underground, I guess.
Unless we want to write the
If we had
check.
a couple of $1 million extra, they might consider it.
Did I understand you correctly, Darrell, that you said that on the golf course side, not as much right-of-way has been taken on that side of the road as on the Sugarwood side?
Oh, I don't know what it adds up to. Do you have a?
It was actually quite a bit. It
It's-
might, if
it's-
one homeowner was
it's quite a bit.
56 and there was there's 3,000 square feet over on that.
I did a little bit of a ranking earlier today. The golf course is the second most impacted property with about 0.30 acres of either acquisition or easement. The single most impacted is Harville and the developer. They're at about 0.6 of an acre that we're needing from them, and that's mainly from the realignment of the S curve that we're doing. And then it goes down quite a bit. The homeowners association area where the pond is, they're at about 0.16 acres, and then everybody else is below 0.1 of an acre, and most of that is easements, temporary construction easements, small slope easements. Mr. Anderson, 0.017 acres total, and that's without the retaining wall. That's the original design.
How much of that is a slope easement? Does he have a slope easement? I don't know. if you
So
knew that.
59 square feet is acquisition. 382 square feet is slope without the wall. Once we add that short wall in there, that will decrease. And then 372 square feet of construction easement, that will also decrease with that wall. So we'll be down to about 1/100th of an acre of impact there.
Any more questions?
I've got a
I would
couple.
like to say something else.
Oh.
Okay, just to grant a little bit more transparency on what's actually happening, the current walkway or sidewalk is approximately 20 feet from my fence. What we're doing is we're making it right on my fence. It's right next to it. So it's not just 1/100th of an acre or whatever. We're physically moving it 20 feet up the bank. So there is now no breezeway, no grassway between what I consider my property or the fence and the walkway. Also, the power pole on my property is about 6 inches from the fence. So it's quite a bit different, I think, than was presented, so. just to put
Okay,
that out
thank
there.
you.
Thank you.
I have two other speakers, Merv Wittenberg.
I'm Merv Wittenberg, and I'm from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, but I am here representing 120 Cabot Hill Lane. I work with National Healthcare Corporation. My questions are just in theory, and I only need to see these drawings because I've never seen those. This doesn't really touch my property right now because it shows it starting 700 feet off of Kingston Pike. And my property is within that 700 feet back toward Kingston Pike. The only thing, like I say, I want to see what the future is for that 700 feet from there to Kingston Pike or is there no plan to do anything on that last 700 feet to Kingston Park?
There is no plan right now to do anything else between the northern end of this project and Kingston Pike. Now, there is a 5-foot sidewalk at, within that 700 feet. Now, it may be something that the town would want to do sometime in the future. I wouldn't think it would be anytime soon, but to make that multi-use greenway, extend that on up to Kingston Pike.
And tie into the NHC Greenway.
And tie into the NHC Greenway.
Yeah.
We have an awful lot of greenway connections we want to do over the next umpteen years. I wouldn't think this one would be one that would be a major priority. Mark, do you want to speak to that? I don't know. It depends on how much use there is.
Right.
If there was a lot of use, there might be a lot of calls saying, well, go ahead and make that, just take it up to the greenway in front of NHC. But that would be a very limited project. And could be done within the, probably within the right-of-way that's there. So,
Merv, does that answer your question?
Well, that does basically answer my question.
Okay.
I have no problem with it. I just want to see what the plan is. I want to see that. That's all I'm interested in. Okay?
Is there anything to see
Well,
other than?
Not yet.
apparently, there's not anything, and I mean, that's fine with me. I just want to make sure that that's the way it is right now, because I haven't seen this until tonight. I have the one sheet like everybody else has, and that was my reason for making the trip up here, was to find out what kind of drawings we do have.
Right.
So, as long as that's the way, as long as that's the way it is, I have no other questions about it.
And then I have Ricky Bullock.
Good evening. I'm Ricky Bullock. I live at 12217 Butternut Circle. My backyard, and I've been there since 1993. Went through the other virtue improvement previously. I live next door to Mr. Anderson, so I am the third property up from Broadwood, if that helps put you in location. Him and I are probably the two most impacted, I guess. Sitting here, I've already had a myriad of changes in my head, and there's no way I can tell you what I want to in 5 minutes. So if you can indulge me. First off, I'd like to help you with your perspective. The bridge down there is not the speed place. Going south, that's where they're already decelerating. Coming off the bridge is where they start accelerating. Up behind our houses is where the speed is going on. From between the detention pond of Sugarwood's common property, right there is where they start picking it up. You can hear them hit the accelerator all through the night, all during the day, and by us. Now, to give you some other perspective, all the accidents, in my knowledge, and I've had to go down there to dead people myself, because of the lay of the road, it tends to go from left to right, if you will, from east to west. Most cars land on the golf course. They go over the fence all the time. Most of the deaths were on that side. So in straightening the road out, you're going to be bringing it more toward us. So to help you with your thought about endangering the walkers and the bicyclers, and I have my own opinion about bicyclers, but to get you to realize what happens on that road, it's like this. Momentum carries them the other way. So in a way, it's safer for the pedestrians, but by the same token, we're going to maybe bring it back. What I'm really kind of dismayed tonight about is I came to the one public meeting that I knew about, and I was not happy because I had not gotten any communication. Ms. Povlin was nice enough to listen to me right that night. I didn't get any updates since that meeting, and I'm hearing different things that I thought I should have been able to know about prior to coming to tonight. Example, power poles, they won't be moved. Walls, not even considering. golf course, too much to fill in behind our area because it drops off. Okay, does that mean because they only have 18 feet and we have 30, it's easier to go our way? I don't buy into the staying with the center line of the road in respect to the boundaries that's there. So tonight, I'm surprised that I wasn't told before that it's not because it's harder to develop on the golf course side, but we got 30 foot we can deal with instead of 18. That's my perception of that comment tonight. I don't like that. I'm not hearing any of this information that's a change from the last meeting. I very much like the idea about the traffic calming, but I know they're so hard to deal with. A roundabout, the only place I can think of would be where Broadwood is, but that would only be 3 out of a 4-way for the use of it if you don't do something with the golf course. I would echo, but I'm not going to repeat for my 5 minutes everything Mr. Anderson has said and most of the other people that have common interest in the road, whether they live in our subdivision or not. It's a death trap through there. Probably never going to solve it. But for the route we're going, I think we're going to increase it. I would like to have more information before this plan is approved, since we're changing information and we, the affected ones, are not hearing about it before it comes for approval. So I would like to ask that a relook, it's a point of reference. Okay, small square footage versus hundreds of square footage. Those are targeted. It's like down at the bridge, back at the pond, right through our area. Okay, it sounds small, but we're getting it because the golf course is not. I don't think the ratio from one end to the other is clear when you verbally talk it, unless you do look at the map and come out and walk or drive the road. So I invite all of you to come out and even, sit there and watch for a day. But I would like to know when the next opportunity for change of information will be known, whether this plan is approved tonight or a preliminary plan is approved tonight or not. Because I'm tired of not getting enough information. And yes, we are the affected ones. And the main points, surely you heard what I said. We were told something different last time. So please allow us and yourselves for decision making to have all the current information, not what was changed and not told to everyone else. That would be what I would ask. Thank you very much.
I have one more speaker.
I think it's important to point out these are preliminary plans. What's before you tonight is approval of preliminary plans. Things will be tweaked between now over the rest of the year. This is approval of the plans in concept. I really feel like the final plans will look very much like this unless you say, Darrell, put a 5-foot sidewalk in there. Darrell, we don't want curb and gutter. You can tell me that tonight, but that's why we're here getting your blessing at this point. But we can't get too deep into the details of the design at this point simply because we've not approached that yet. So this is just approval of the plans in concept.
Do we require, I know that's a part of our road plan that we require curb and gutter, but is it a necessity? Is it something that has to be done?
We do require that. That is our standard for collectors and arterials.
What's the?
It does provide a little bit of protection.
Okay.
Now, mind you, if a car is doing 40 or 50 miles an hour, you will launch across the curb and gutter. But it does provide a little bit of protection. It drains better than just a standard curb. It actually drains better than a ditch. But that's our standard at this point.
Well, you say your estimated cost here is about $3.175 million. Estimated cost, have we got an approved budget for this?
We budgeted $425 for design, $450 for right-of-way, $450,000 for right-of-way, and $2.3 million for construction. So, yes, your numbers.
So we have to stay, without further approval of additional monies, we've got to stay within a certain plan here. In other words, we can't go too far over on the golf course side if there's a whole lot of field required.
That's correct. We are trying to minimize the impact.
Okay.
And I
So
do
these
know
preliminary
that
plans are, while they are preliminary, it would, to deviate too much from them is going to cost more money.
that's correct, yes.
I have one more speaker. Is it Rick Creekmore? Okay, I wasn't sure if
Legal
that.
name Robert, but
I hadn't seen
So,
that name before. Sorry.
I'm Rip Creekmore. I'm at 12301 Butternut Circle. So I am the other one on the corner of Virtue Road and Broadwood, even though my address says Butternut Circle. I just want to say I'm glad we're thinking and concerned with traffic calming. We've had a wreck where a car ended up on the back of our hill, which will have to be cut into in order to make a 10-foot walkway, multi-use walkway. I don't know why we're encouraging people necessarily to want to be riding their bikes and walking down the road. People do, as everybody has said, they go 50 miles an hour. Widening the road is just going to make them go quicker. I think there's a lot more that needs to be thought through before moving forward. So whether it's traffic calming devices, which needs to be there, maybe that's making it a three-way stop sign at Broadwood to slow everyone down, because that's where the main speed is. And I think there needs to be discussion with LCUB to determine what are you going to do. If the poles got moved, they'd be almost right on top of our pool, and I don't think anybody wants to be in the pool and have lines up there. Going underground would be ideal. And I just want to say, I think a 5-foot sidewalk would make a lot more sense. I think it would look better. It would fit in with how the other looks. So if you're coming on Kingston Pike, or if you're coming into Sugarwood and you're going up across from the church, just put in a new 5-foot sidewalk there. That's probably the better way to go. But I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I would say something about that trail. One of the reasons why it's wider is because that trail would connect actually really pretty long distance, because once the gap is connected through Harville, then the town property, it'll go all the way to the bridge at Sheffield.
And Anchor Park.
And Anchor Park, ultimately. So, I mean, that's why it's kind of a multi-use, proposed multi-use, because it's very difficult if you're in a double baby stroller or something like that. Not that I'm pushing those, but I've seen it many times. It's hard to pass if you're on a 5-foot sidewalk. And we're trying to make our community more inviting to all forms of people movement, not just movement of cars. I think if we can make that system more inviting, I think like Louise was saying, and actually have some, in my opinion, some landscaping in that grass strip to help soften that and to give that perception of the street width being more narrow and a more attractive roadway. There's things like that we maybe should look at and consider maybe as part of this project. And that's also kind of a form of traffic calming, because again, it narrows that perception of street width, and people tend to drive a little slower when there is landscaping along the street edge.
Would a stop sign at Broadmoor be that just in outer space? I mean, all of a sudden he brought that up. It's like that would bring everybody to a stop. And I think about the stop signs we added on Smith Road a couple of years ago in front of Andover and Hickory Woods, and a lot of traffic goes through there, and you got to slow down.
I haven't done a traffic count on Broadwood, but my guess is it would be far from meeting warrants outlined in the manual on uniform traffic control devices.
To have a three-way intersection.
Have a multi-way stop there.
A three-way, yeah.
And the problem with multi-way stops is if you're on the minor street pulling out onto the major street, it creates a false sense of security for those people on the minor street. If you drive on the main route Every time you pass through, there's nobody sitting there waiting to pull out. People start rolling through those stop signs. Eventually, they start rolling through really fast. And it creates that false sense of security, because if you're pulling out, you see a car coming, you know they're going to stop, so you go ahead and pull out. And it really creates a more dangerous situation than not having the stop sign there at all.
Okay.
And that's been our experience when we have a few unwarranted stop signs around town, and most people complain because nobody stops at those stop signs.
Probably the ones on Smith Road.
The one at Andover, the one at Hickory
Yeah.
Woods.
Okay.
We get a lot of complaints on them.
Well, the good news is it really sounds like you guys are trying to figure out other ways to be able to slow this down, and
Sure.
you're looking at all the alternatives.
I will always say it's always difficult to engineer a solution to an enforcement problem. But
I still think
this is where we are.
I still think a traffic circle in front of the Harville Farm would be a great idea. So
that's not a bad idea. And we'll look into that.
Do we have any 12-foot multi-use paths in the town now?
12 foot. Yeah, Union Road.
That's required by TDOT, though, right?
That's the TDOT standard now. It's 12 feet, and that's actually a standard that a lot of communities are going to. And some of them have like separated lanes. One for, I mean, this wouldn't really apply in this context at this point, but it could in the future.
how wide's the one in front of the United Methodist Church? Is that 10?
It might be 10.
Okay, but it's
Yeah.
probably not 12.
I don't think it's 12. No, I'm not aware of any that we have that are 12 currently.
Would it help these homeowners if the 12-foot multi-use path was reduced to 10?
I think in some sections it is.
Intersection, yeah.
We've already reduced it, and we've reduced the separation, didn't we?
The grass
From
strip
8 to
width
6?
has gone to 8 to 6. Yeah, yeah.
That first profile.
Now you could look at the lane widths or something as well. You know, the roadway itself to narrow that a little bit, possibly.
Well, you know, 1/1700th of an acre may not be much to the town, but it would be if it were in my backyard.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I have one more person that's just signed up here, Jeff Meredith.
I'm Jeff Meredith, 12305 Butternut Circle. I'm the black fence, so is how I'm known. I got the golden retrievers out there if y'all drive by too, so I'm the golden retriever family. The power lines, this is what I just need clarifying on. Right now, if they're right on the property line, and utility gets 10 foot from them, and there's not 10 foot to get beyond the fence right now, what ends up happening at the end of the day? Does the power pole go across the fence and be put in the yard because you have the 10-foot utility easement? Is that correct, that you get a 10-foot utility easement?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're reading it right. I mean, it is
So
possible.
that is possible.
Yeah.
So the east side's taking a lot of consideration for the greenway. Why doesn't the west side take some consideration for their utility easement? And let's put the utility lines on that side. They're on that side of the road past the bridge. Is there any consideration of taking, you're going to have to move utility poles anyway. He's already said that. Why move them just 3 feet this way versus moving them across the road? Is there a greater expense? Because now there's a greater expense because I'm going to probably have a bigger problem with it taking them and putting them in my yard.
It depends on what's on it. You start if there's a bunch of fiber optic on it, you're going to run the expense up considerably.
Right. At this time, it's premature to say, I mean, without any plans from LCUB, they've not even seen the roadway plans yet. So, I mean, we've got to have something that we can take to them, which is why we're here tonight.
Are the trees along the golf course, are you having to take those out anyway?
There will be probably quite a few trees removed within the right-of-way. And for that matter, I mean, there's quite a bit of slope easement on that side, so there will be trees removed the whole way.
I'm saying I could understand today you can't put the power lines over there because you have all those trees there, and obviously those two conflict with each other. But maybe that's an alternative to look at with LCUB when you're sitting down with their engineers to look at some options about how maybe that makes sense.
I'd say a lot.
If it's a matter of just, if they're going to have to, I don't know if they're all going to have to be moved.
Right.
But I'm sure they would consider that, and I would certainly encourage it. I don't think it would hurt any, it would make any issue for the golf course if power lines are on that side. Obviously, for the homeowners, they don't like having it right out back.
Sure.
So, but that's something we can pursue.
One other thing with the guide wires, you don't have to worry about if you wanted to go to that middle pole in between the greenway and the road. That was a consideration, or somebody mentioned.
Yeah.
You wouldn't even have that as an issue. You put them on the other side of the road. So
That's a
the
possibility.
guide wires, they can go over there and they're not going to be in the middle of the greenway or anything. So no, I appreciate you listening.
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Is that it for the,
Yeah, I think that's all I had to sign up.
does anybody on the planning commission have any more questions or comments? Are we
Well,
ready?
do we need to take a look at the preliminary plans before we approve them?
That's what.
I know that's a preliminary, but if moving the power lines and all that sort of stuff.
Well, that would come later in the,
Kind of the final plans, the final construction documents.
so we will look at it again.
I think they're just looking for your general feedback on the concept, that they're the cross sections and the general idea,
Walking
the
trail
goals
obviously is a big thing that
they
we're
were
looking at
talking
tonight.
about.
Generally speaking, where the walking trail's going,
I
and
think y'all have talked about the need to examine some traffic calming, and that could be a variety of different things potentially, maybe in more than one location, or maybe something in the road itself. The power pole issue, which they haven't gotten to that point yet, having some kind of barrier to protect pedestrians at the bridge, where there's that kind of where it comes together with the road.
make the bridge bigger. Depends on what's more cost effective. Add another, I assume it's just a box culvert. So maybe just lengthen it.
So is any other comments or that you all have beyond that at this point?
Now, so do we need a motion on this for the preliminary?
Is that, you want that, Daryl? Some kind of, do you want a formal vote on this, the preliminary concept, or?
But what does that mean? Are we asking for you to explore options of putting the poles on the other side and,
We've kind of made a punch.
Investigating
We've made a punch list for you, Daryl. Do you think you made notes of everything?
I think Mark has.
Yeah, I think Mark's got it.
Well, I think I just summarized the ones.
Yeah, I think Mark did too. I just make sure Daryl's.
I think
reading-
the power line
Daryl and our
placement,
ultimately our other designer is everybody's reading on the same page.
Right. Again, this is approval of concept. We will look at whatever we can to tweak things a bit, try to encourage LCUB. I can't tell LCUB they have to go on the opposite side of the road.
But they already have some poles over there. Is that
They-
what I understand?
That's correct. And usually, where they are is based on where they have right-of-way and the alignment of the road. As the road kind of bends left and right, they like straight lines. It might be possible, especially with some of the trees coming out, that they can move over there.
Okay, in that case, does anybody have a motion?
So moved. A motion to approve the preliminary plans for Virtue Road.
Second.
All those in favor?
Are we saying taking into consideration the punch list?
Yes.
Part of that motion?
I guess I can't really say
You
subject
want
to
to
the
run over
punch
that
list.
punch list again?
I think Mark has it, but if Mark, if you
Okay.
want to, there's three.
This is recorded.
There's
so-
kind of 3 or 4 items
I
on
think
there.
the traffic calming is a holistic look at the lane widths, at the everything.
Traffic
Is
circle.
that right?
Yes.
Et cetera.
The whatever measures could be employed to slow traffic down, because I think that is very important. I would agree with that. The barrier at the bridge, we talked about that, or make it wider or something like that. The power pole placement, whether that can be shifted over to the west side potentially. I don't know if I
Just
captured
anything
anything
to
else.
minimize the impact on the citizens, those homes, residences.
Yep.
And maximize.
Even to the extent of moving the center line somewhat on the road.
Right. Well, one thing we do have to be careful of is the golf course. Now, it's easy to say, well, it's wide open, but you don't want to affect the playability.
Right.
That was a very expensive thing we did that's currently underway at Kingston Pike, simply because it affected the playability of number 12. I do know that, I guess it's number 5, the green sits fairly close to the road, but well below it. So we've got a retaining wall in there, and we're trying to protect that buffer. We just have to be very conscious of.
Limitations, yeah.
Well, we are trying to be very conscious of the effects we have on everybody.
And the budget. Yeah,
And the
let's also,
budget.
it's not just about protecting the golf course. It's about trying to stay within budget. So we
Right.
start moving things further west, and we're.
It can become expensive really quick.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, we have a preliminary budget for the project that. Well, I mean,
Well, we do by definition right now.
obviously we won't have an exact budget until we let it for bid, and then we know exactly what the contractor bids, but we've got to be able to tell the board of mayor and aldermen, ultimately, this is what needs to be put into the CIP for the next few years based upon the following budget. I need a bigger budget. Yes, sir. No.
We don't know. I'm concerned that we don't know.
I will say on the golf course side, we're talking part-time.
I'm talking three.
If you're going to talk, you need to come to the microphone.
I just want to clarify on hole 5 going down the road. That's golf cart path, and if the ball comes over on that side, you're under trees, you can't even hardly play out. It's not playability up to that green. I live all the way down through there. It's golf cart path, and then they've got 20 feet to their fence.
Thank you. Where are we with our,
With an amended motion, right?
yes, your motion?
In a second.
Well, I think
You're looking for a
Kyle
second.
already seconded it.
We have a second. Okay,
Myers made the motion, Kyle seconded it. Yeah.
okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Mark, what time do we need to take a break?
10 o'clock.
Okay. Discussion and a public, item number 10, discussion and a public hearing on a request for approval of concept plan for the Brass Lantern subdivision, parcel 012, tax map 162, 801 McPhee Road, 20.267 acres, Homestead Land Holdings LLC applicant.
Okay, this is, cleared out there. The concept plan for the property that y'all considered for rezoning, a couple items earlier. This particular concept plan involves, it's basically a cul-de-sac with 30 lots. And they will be requesting 2 variances from the subdivision regulations that you all would need to take action on first before you take action on the concept plan. The development, as you can see there, we talked about this as part of the rezoning, and the western part, the left portion of that screen, there's a pretty sizable portion of the open space down there. There is a drainage way that runs through there. You can see it kind of wind its way along the western edge. And that's also where the steepest part of the property is, in that western portion. They have one large estate lot that's platted at the end of the cul-de-sac, and that's just to get their 30 lots, because they are proposing no more than one access into and out of the development. They're limited by the fire code to no more than 30 lots unless they sprinkle the dwelling units. So this development is proposing to connect the walking trail that stubs out from McPhee Manor from the north into their development, and then it would come across their road with a protected landscaped island, and then it would link up to the sidewalk, and then the sidewalk would take it down to another walking trail section that would tie into the town's property, and we would eventually tie into that as part of a future phase of McPhee Park, so that you would be completely connected really all the way back to Bridgemore and further. So it's a pretty valuable connection through the property. The access does line up with the cottages at Price Farm access, one of their accesses. And as you can see, it's a pretty severe turn as soon as you enter the property. That's a good form of traffic calming. The street's not completely straight. So they've addressed many of the things that we're trying to promote through our subdivision regulations. They are requesting 2 variances. The first variance, and again, we'll have to take action on these separately, is from the requirement in our subdivision regulations for more than one public street vehicular access into and out of the development. They're requesting a variance for the reasons, for the following reasons. The property to the north's already platted out, McPhee Manor. There's a drainage way and steeper slopes and part of the open space on the west portion of the property. If you were to make a connection through there, it would cause some additional disruption. To the south, you have the town's park, and we already have kind of a concept of how we want to see that developed, and it doesn't provide for a vehicular connection in that location. So I think there's some logic from the staff's perspective in this case, and the fact that they're not platting more than 30 lots. As you all know, there is some language that we added when we updated our subdivision regulations to address topographical situations where you had 30 or fewer lots that were being platted. And really, there's not really a good way to extend a street beyond this property in the staff's opinion, so we would recommend approval of that variance request.
And the second variance?
You want to take action on that first?
Yeah,
or-
you don't want to talk about them both at the same time?
And they're interrelated. The second variance is from the requirement that a cul-de-sac cannot be more than 500 feet in length. This property has a cul-de-sac that is over 1,200 feet. The reason, the justification for the variance request in that regard is that you can see the shape of the property. It's long and narrow. It really doesn't lend itself for loop streets. It's just not wide enough. So there's kind of a inherent physical form of the property that restricts compliance with that aspect of the subdivision regulations. And then also they're not platting more than 30 lots. I think given those conditions, the staff would also support that variance.
So we need to deal with the variances before we deal with the
Yeah,
rezoning.
Right.
yeah.
I'm going to do
More questions or comments from anybody? I got any questions before we?
Russ, you and Bob must be running out of subdivision names. Brass Lantern, that's what you guys came up with?
I'm not in charge of naming.
All right.
will
Then I
tell you
won't
this,
pick on you.
though.
I'll pick on Bob next time I see him.
The process of getting road and subdivision names through
Is getting more
Knox
difficult.
County is
That's true.
excruciating. So
Okay.
Brass Lantern, I think of a restaurant that used to be. You know what? Yeah.
That's exactly what I think of too. It just sounds silly for a subdivision, but I understand they're.
it lends well for the entrance feature design and some theming with exterior lighting and street lights and stuff. Would assume they'd be brass and maybe look like lanterns.
I'm absolutely just picking on you. I'm picking on you. You can.
There's a theme there.
You call it
Okay.
purple polka dotted people eater if you want. So.
No, I think that one's been taken. Actually,
Yeah.
with that.
Okay, do I have a motion for the variance?
I'm going to move to grant a variance from the requirement for more than one vehicular access into and out of the property.
Now, do we need to include in that motion, as we've done this before with the variances, the hardships.
Yeah, the reason.
Reasons.
And the
Reasons. So,
Okay.
Louise, I'm going to let you have at it.
Well, I assume because of topography in the rear of the property.
Yeah.
Is that sufficient, or-
If you want to go with the ones
Just
that are
say it's
listed with the staff
There-
recommendations.
Items 1, 2, and 3.
Plus the 30 lot thing, I mean,
Yeah.
is
Oh,
also
there, I'm sorry, I'm looking at this one.
differentiated as well.
Well, as stated, plus the 30 lots.
It really pains me to recommend approval of that kind of variance, believe me. So I do think
I
they
know it
have-
does. I know it does.
They do have a kind of a valid reason, I think, in this case, because I really wouldn't want to see that western portion be torn apart essentially by extending the road. And it really doesn't, the lots to the west of that are large estate lots that are very unlikely to ever connect to it. So,
Okay.
Ready for a vote?
Ready, do I have it?
Did I
We
did the
got a sec-
motion?
We got a motion.
and Betty
Betty
did a
seconded.
second, yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Then the
Okay,
second variance.
Variance number
I
2.
make a motion to approve the second variance for the requirement for a cul-de-sac to be no more than 500 feet based on the physical condition, inherent configuration of the site and its physical layout.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
In the concept plan itself, the remaining comments are at your places. There's 6 of those. There was one, number 6 was
Number 6.
something that we did put in there and kind of phrased it such that y'all might want to provide some input.
I kind of like the narrowing, the kind of what's going on there. You talking about where the walking trail kind of
Where the
ties in?
grass strip.
Yeah.
You know, okay, yeah. I mean, there's several ways you can do that. You can retain that grass strip and just veer the sidewalk out and it would still be in that 10-foot construction easement, construction utility easement. You can leave it straight and then have a more narrow grass strip section. You know, there's
I like it straight. I mean, I just think it feels more natural being straight instead of meandering around. And it keeps it within the right of way. I know we can do it in an easement, but
Any other questions?
I think they're okay with all the other the comments, I believe.
Yeah, we're fine. I spoke to Mark about a couple of them today. We're not.
I think you said that the planning commission should determine whether the applicants plan to narrow. What's your plan?
Should determine, well.
you have a
just the way-
preference is what
Well,
she's
what they're
asking, Russ.
proposing
The way
is
it's drawn
straight
is
with the
what we
narrowing of the grass
propose.
strip.
We would prefer not to have the town's sidewalk, public sidewalk on private property. The front 10-foot easement is a utility and drainage easement, not necessarily a pedestrian access easement. And I'm afraid that could cause some implications from underwriting, and I'm not sure, but from liability standpoints. If somebody falls on the sidewalk, that's.
I mean, that can be addressed in your plat. I mean, we have some language that,
There's
if we
a lot
wanted
of
that, I wouldn't worry
sidewalks
about that a bit. I think what we need to look about is, does it make sense, or does it not make sense?
Yeah.
But,
We prefer it where we have it drawn. So.
Where that island is, where the
At the front, at the
the
entrance.
sidewalk, you just run
Between
straight
Refuge
instead of
Island,
swells
it comes
around the
through.
island.
The sidewalk stays the equal distance from the center line, but because of the landscape island at the crossing, the lanes get wider, so therefore the grass strip narrows through the widening, and then it comes back out.
right there. in
Does it
that
have any
area.
grass strip, or does it,
Yeah.
sidewalk actually
Oh,
touches the
during
back
the-
curb?
Oh, the real
Oh,
big
okay.
There's still a big grass strip.
Narrow.
Yeah,
It's 6 feet the rest of the sidewalk.
Yeah.
It's
yeah,
at
I'm
least 6
comfortable
feet.
with it.
Oh, yeah, I see that.
Any other thoughts?
I was trying to figure out where it is.
Anybody else?
Have more questions or comments? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the concept plan,
Subject to items 1 through 5?
1 through 5, right?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
You have to go home now?
He gets to go home. Yeah. I wish we could trade with him.
Item number 11, discussion and public hearing on a request for the approval of the site plan of Knox Valley Dental, 11852 Kingston Pike, 1.37 acres, zoned O-1, CMA Design, Blankenship and Partners, PLLC applicant.
We'll try to get through this before 10, so just don't let me.
It's going to be close.
But this particular site is the former Hodges property. It's actually 3 lots currently between Cheho Road to the east and the access off of Kingston Pike that takes you to First Tennessee Bank to the west. It's that property. The property to the south is zoned residential, so they have a required 25-foot buffer, and they are going to have a couple of bioretention areas on that south portion of the property. I don't know if I can pull that up here. That's the general site plan there. You can see the main access, the only access is really on Cheho. There's an emergency access only. It'll have bollards that would be to Kingston Pike, and that's in order to meet fire code requirements. And that's in this general. That's that location there. There's an existing curb cut there, but it of course doesn't comply with any requirements, so the staff couldn't support obviously a full public access there. But this would be emergency only, and it would be, you couldn't drive across that in regular vehicle. It would have to be an emergency vehicle, and so they're also trying to work out a cross-access connection with the property owner to the west. We're hopeful that by the time this is replatted toward the end of the project that will have occurred. But that would, tie in here. As you can see that the access over to First Tennessee goes due west there. So that's what the goal is, to get those connected. Similar to what you see with the new Premier Eye Care building, where they've connected to the Farragut Corporate Center to the west. So that's what we're trying to encourage, so that you have more than one way in and out of the project. They're constructing a new sidewalk along Cheho with a 6-foot grass strip. And let's see, I'm trying to think if there's anything else to note here. Let me go to the next slide. And that you can see kind of those bioretention areas there on the lower portion of the property. If you look at their landscape plan, again on the south part, you can see it's heavily landscaped. It's actually pretty heavily landscaped throughout the development. It's going to be a nice addition to the town. The building itself, that's what it's proposed to look like. So the remaining comments on the plan are at your places. I think we had 17, but a lot of those are, just reminders or paperwork related items that aren't really substantive. But if you all have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those. I think you brought material sample or color. Okay. If y'all want to see that, they brought some materials and color samples of what the building materials would look like.
Let's see that. You had to haul it in here, so we want to see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's do that. If the commission will allow me, I'm going to pass this around. It's a better drawing, I think. Maybe you can look at this, and we'll pull out material.
I'm ready for bed.
They have to
Have been.
See some building material? Okay. Stick this say that's kind of washed out. We are considering a lighter color brick. That hasn't been decided yet. We've got a whole table full. I'm Bill Blankenship of Blankenship.
If you will, need you to speak in the microphone over here, please.
We'll have to take a break at
What-
10,
yeah, do
so
you
I
wanna
don't
do that
know
now?
how you want to do that, because they
Let's
probably
do
won't.
that now
You
before
wanna
they
do
get
that now?
started. Okay,
Yeah, that
sorry
might
about
be
that,
good.
but we do have to take a break
Okay.
and change film.
Just tell me where to stand.
Okay.
About 10 minutes
Yeah.
is what she's
Or
saying.
5. We'll get it.
So if you need, anybody needs a break, we're gonna take a quick break and.
The reason I'm asking is, I can't close on the property until I know.
I said, somebody
Right.
did farm, everything else.
Unless if I know.
I never heard another word about leaving the car.
Yeah, I mean, well, it can be approved. I mean, there
And I've told
might just be some
Brian,
comments that we have that he'll need to
sons,
address,
I
but
said,
that's very, just like your site plan, it's, we're recommending approval of it. There's some comments that just need to be cleaned up on it. I don't see it being a problem. You're welcome.
Had a wreck about.
Oh.
Everybody?
Get on with the show.
Yeah, let's finish this up.
Okay, we ready? Is everybody
Yeah,
back?
she's ready.
Okay.
She's ready.
We're going to resume the meeting now.
Yeah.
And we're ready to see your pictures.
Okay. Just real quickly before we do that, my name is Josh McGee. I'm an architect along with Bill Blankenship. And I just want you to know
Your
that,
address.
excuse me?
The address of your business.
4009 Forest Glen Drive, Knoxville. We've been on a long journey to get to this project. We've worked with this young dentist who is making a commitment to Farragut. He wants to be here for the long term. We looked at another property back 6 months ago, which didn't work out for us. And then he found this property, and there's been a lot of challenges with this property. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but previously there was a hardware store there and the hardware store burned down, and rather than hauling off all the debris from that, they bulldozed over it and just left all of that in the dirt. And so in addition to the other project challenges we have, we're gonna remediate the soils to make, properly compacted for the building. But my dentist, my client here has been very patient through this whole, hopefully we're almost at the end gate. But anyway, we have, throughout this whole process, we've met with Mark and Bart on several occasions. We've tried to do a project that will not only will he be proud of, but the town of Farragut will be proud of. It's a very high quality project. It's going to be a type 2B construction, which is a good solid type of building. We met with Mark and staff in terms of the siding of the building on the site. We know now that Farragut is trying to not have a big sea of asphalt in front of buildings the way a lot of the big boxes were. And so we try to be very sensitive to that. And we've pulled the building. It's not right up on the parking and all is behind it. Anyway, we're trying to let him tell you what the materials are.
Okay, thank you, John. Our address is 6016 Brookvale Lane, and we are located in Bearden, which I guess that other guy earlier didn't care much for, but that's where our office is located. It's a nice place to have an office. But, let's see. About the building materials, there's I think a staff questioned the percentage of masonry requirement for that. In many of those elevations, it's more like over 80% masonry. What is the masonry? Really, there's two kinds. We've got a combination of brick and crab orchard stone. I think, I know most of it is brick, and a minority of the surface area is the crab orchard stone. Here's two pieces of it. I'm sure you've seen this around. It's quite an earthy looking material. It's got every range of color in it, from orange to dark brown, black, white, yellow. I personally used a heck of a lot of this on McGee Tyson Airport Terminal just a few years ago. A large part of the exterior of that airport terminal is this crab orchard stone from right up the highway in Crab Orchard, Tennessee. So, and then for brick, I brought two samples. This in particular is a Glengarry brick. It's an excellent quality brick. We're thinking of a softer, lighter color palette instead of a darker, harsher brick color that just jumps at you. Something that's more easy on the eye, softer in appearance. There's 3 samples that I brought with me. We still haven't selected, the final one yet. We'll certainly review that with you when we do. We just, well, let me get to the metal panel next, and then I'll mention something. I'll put these down where you can see them all. See the differences in them. And then a very small percentage of the exterior material, we want to use insulated metal panel, and I think that's right below me. Brought 2 samples of that I've had a great deal of success with.
That's glass.
More silver one. This is, get to the mic. This is a Centria insulated metal panel. In particular, this color is called Silversmith. And we've used a lot of this on the UT campus, particularly Pratt Pavilion, Anderson Training Center, the Natalie Haslam Music Center. All of them have this Centria insulated metal panel. And like I said, this one's color is in particular called Silversmith. And it's beautiful with brick. And then the second one, it's a warm gray. And that's a plain and simple name for this, it's warm gray. We just finished the Stowers Machinery headquarters on the east side of town, and we used a very light brick to match their existing brick, and Used quite a bit of this warm gray. They went together perfectly. It was a very complex renovation, upgrade, and lay these down in front so they could see them, Josh. And the last material that I brought, one of the principal exterior materials, this is PPG Solar Band, Atlantica. It's a high-performance glass, to say the least. It's one of the highest performance glasses on the market today. We've used this Solar Band Atlantica, I want to say dozens of times in this area, but it's probably more than dozens of times. It's excellent glass by PPG.
Can I say one more thing about the design?
The reason we ask you to speak in the microphone, air too.
The design concept, we're trying to create an iconic feature in the middle of the building. So right in the very middle is a two-story lobby area. And then Dr. Zaveri's office is on one side, and then on the other side is going to be leased out to some other medical practice. We don't know who that's going to be, but we spent a long time trying to come up with that concept that would look good from Kingston Pike and also from Cheho. So
Maybe you could show us where each of these elements are on one-year elevations. So maybe as you're going through your brick, your stone, as well as your metal, and yeah, I think it might help everybody get a better feel for it.
Okay. On this east elevation, primarily you see brick, and there's a band of the metal panel on the top. Oh, it's about that wide.
That's the gray metal panel.
And the rest of it's glass, and with this cap on top, this big shading device is what it is. We have a clear story, very high ceiling lobby area, but it's really shaded. We don't want the harsh rays of the sun just piercing right through. The west elevation, it's primarily the same thing. You see the brick, you see the metal panel stripe there, and the center higher lobby beyond. There is a canopy out front for some rain protection with people coming in the entrance. Now, the north elevation faces Kingston Pike. This bay in particular and this bay in particular are clad in the crab orchard stone. The remainder is in brick. And these two walls at the lobby turn back into the courtyard itself. And they're all
created a courtyard on the north side up there, which trying to make it relate to pedestrians who walk by on Kingston. And one of the comments, Mark, that came up was about the decorative wall that we have that extends a little bit into the setback as being 3 feet to 6 feet in height. Actually, I think that was just a mistake on the architectural elevation because it's only 3 foot 6 inches high. It's 42 inches high rather than 6.
That would take care of that. I mean,
so I wanted to mention that.
But that'd be considered more of a landscape feature than it would be part of an architectural element, wouldn't it? And it's not within the footprint
yeah,
of the
and
building.
it does have to be non-covered though, per the language in the zoning ordinance. But but the wall, yeah, that's part of the engagement. That gives you a little separation from the street, but yet kind of still engaging with the street.
While we're talking about the courtyard, not to steal your thunder, because we'd still like to talk about your architecture. What about tying that courtyard in with the sidewalk out on Kingston Pike and having a connection there with your courtyard?
Yes, we do have one option.
We can,
I brought with me.
yeah, you can.
Well, no, you don't need to show it to me. It wasn't on our plans. There's no reason to show it to me. As long as we're reading off the same page, because we really try to encourage that as we've taken these buildings and pushed them up towards Kingston Pike.
We've
trying
gone
to give
back
people
and forth on that.
I know sometimes it's hard to come up with an alternative entrance, but the way
Yeah.
you guys have designed it with your central lobby, it actually might work out okay if you had a pedestrian walk
Right.
into the, somebody might want to walk down for a dental appointment.
Right.
So, okay.
Right.
No, you don't need to show it to me. No, that's great. So
Okay.
we'll let you continue.
And the only remaining elevation would be if this one's along Kingston Pike, it's the opposite elevation, the south elevation, where really the front door is. If I'm a patient coming to the building, this is the elevation that I would see. The lobby is in the center, mostly glass, with shading from the bay here, and then the remainder is the brick and the solar band PPG Atlantica glass. Simple palette of material.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
So do you
Look.
walk through the lobby into the courtyard?
No.
You can.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Way through.
The lobby and then the courtyard.
Going to put a fountain at the end of that, so.
Great place for employees to maybe go out and have lunch, things like that. So I think we'd really try to encourage this kind of outdoor gathering areas, and maybe it'll get used. So and I love the green glass, I really do. Well, I do have a question that this commission spent some time on over the years as we've had different architectural plans come in front of us, and it has to do with your parapet selection. And typically we try to emphasize the parapets a little bit more with kind of a neoclassical trend, which is not necessarily your trend here that is what you're going for. But I guess what I'm trying to get my arms around the steel panel at the top of your walls, what I'm calling a parapet, and exactly kind of how that transitions from the brick to the top, and is that kind of meeting some of the threshold that we've held other applicants to over the years with their parapets. I love your building, and I think I'd just like to talk about it a little bit.
I can walk you through many buildings that do come up with grade to a certain point. They get to the parapet and they're the metal, but they're up and over.
Right, just like just a cap.
You cannot effectively waterproof a parapet with just taking the brick all the way up, leaving the exposed brick on top.
I agree.
of the parapet and then down the backside.
I agree.
It will leak terribly.
Well, I'm really talking more of a philosophical architectural element. Is what we tried to do. And a lot of times we've done it with maybe another soldier course, or we've done it maybe with a little emphasis of crown. I'm not advocating, putting a bunch of ephes up there and, a bunch of foam crown molding, and it's out of date and kind of, it looks funny, and is scaled was never appropriate. But generally that's kind of what, philosophically, what we've held other applicants to is trying to kind of emphasize the parapet a little bit. You've done it somewhat. It's just your parapet's kind of square. There's not a whole lot of dimension to your parapet, and I'm not necessarily familiar with the metal product that you're putting up there, and I'm just trying to get my arms around it.
Well, the other thing too, Bill, is that it's all part of, it's being cohesive, the whole thing to go together. And we have a little bit of the metal panel at the main two-story lobby in the middle.
The silver panel is
Yeah, the silver
is
panel.
at your iconic element, and the more I
Yeah.
think you called it warm gray is going to be your parapet. Okay.
Well, we're trying to tie all that together, and at one point, we had the parapet much taller, we had the metal much taller, but we were violating that 75% rule for masonry, so we
Okay.
cut it down.
You say you had more metal up there, and to get your percentages back down, you pulled the metal down a
We
little bit,
pulled it
pulled the
back
parapet
down.
down. Okay.
And then to piggytail on what Bill said, really, it's also a waterproofing issue. We're trying to,
Yeah, ground level from your main floor elevation.
3 feet or so.
Oh wow. Okay. Or your lobby.
Ground at the top of the parapet.
Just so it's 23 feet. Okay.
It gets up there.
Okay. So you probably have enough up there for some of your to hide some of your mechanicals, or are most of your mechanicals on either side of the building?
Let me check on it. No, I'm referring, there it is. I'm referring
Yeah.
to the top of it.
I would say that'd be pretty.
I don't think it's quite that tall,
Say
yeah.
the
Yeah.
Most of the building is 16 feet.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Well, that was the other thing with the parapet, is it kind of helps keep a building from looking short and squatty. I'm not saying your building looks short and squatty by any stretch of the imagination. I'm again just trying to. Your parapet doesn't have a lot of flair, and I'm not talking about design flair. I'm talking about literally having any flair on the parapet, and that's okay.
Right.
I'm just. And we're just trying to get our arms around it, because there's different design elements that we've emphasized in the past. And when somebody comes to us in the future and says, well, they did that, why did they do that? I'm just trying to get my arms around the information so we can explain to them, for certain situations. Your building's a little bit different. I wouldn't call it modern by any means, but there's a modern element to it. So,
Right.
It's a combination we use so effectively at the Beatos Airport Terminal. I still get compliments on the natural stone that's there right next to the high-tech up-to-date, almost machine, high-tech material.
Yeah.
The combination of those two coming together, something about it, the public loves that combination.
I love our airport.
And
Very proud of our airport. Thank
still
you.
get compliments about it. It's
Yeah.
been open 15, 16.
Curiosity question. What color is the mortar gonna be for your brick and your stone?
Comes the order?
The mortar?
Mortar.
It seems,
Now, that's
to
what-
me, I don't like the gray and the tan.
It will be a colored mortar.
Mhm.
If, let's say, we settle on this one, it'd be very close to this color, but probably a little lighter,
Okay,
almost like a malt color
all right,
for this. It would not be gray.
okay.
With your stone in there, I'm not worried about it looking monotone or bland. So I think you guys have done a good job of trying to put some interest in it and kind of mix it up, especially when you're dealing with a fairly wide building. I'm most interested in your Kingston Pike elevation, but all your elevations on this building are real impressive.
Thank you.
Question. I noticed that your east wing, so to speak, is angled. Is that to stay within the building envelope for the lot?
No, actually, we were trying to give it a little bit of interest.
I didn't know whether it was a physical reason
No,
or an architectural reason.
Actually, the client, he wants a unique building there. I mean, he's going to be there for a very long time, and he wants this building to stand out. And just a little bit of a twist there, people are going to drive by and say, what's that about? So it's in a way, it's a little bit of just sort of advertising, that, oh yeah, he's in that building that has the twist at the end. So,
But it's real subtle.
it's very subtle. It's only like a 5-degree splay, so it's not.
And so I'm trying to understand the reasoning behind it. And
You thought it was a setback issue, or there was some,
Yeah.
some,
One way
some
or
other
the other.
issue of why they had to do that. But
Right.
no, I think it's creative.
It's a traffic calming feature.
Oh no, we need it on Virtue Road.
Right.
Slow that traffic down.
You all have gone over the latest subject twos, and you're fine with these?
And
Except for the one that we've decided is not a.
except for the
sidewalk to the courtyard to be able to connect into. I think we've got it all.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
We are also, as part of this process, my client is giving up 10 more feet of right-of-way for Kingston Pike. Since, as part of this, there's 3 lots there, 3 parcels that are being recombined. And so we're dedicating 10 more feet to Kingston Pike.
You're in the process of combining those 3 and making them one?
Yes, ma'am. In fact,
That's one of the
we have
subject
sort of a
twos.
progress print we brought tonight, but it's in the works.
Well, that probably gets it in compliance for a 100-foot right-of-way, which is what that right-of-way should have been. Just that, I don't think that property's been platted in a long time.
recombining the
We can do it, but again, we
No,
do
we don't
appreciate
have- they haven't
your right-of-way
submitted
dedication.
that
So
yet.
that's how we get
That's
those
one of the
right-of-ways
subject twos.
on the cheap. Thanks.
The plat for next month's meeting.
Okay.
That'll be submitted Monday. So
Okay.
they just couldn't get a grading or building permit, obviously, until that plat's approved and recorded.
Okay, anybody more questions or comments? Are we ready for a motion?
Do we remove number 4 from the subject twos, or we can just leave it in there and you guys know that it's been dealt with?
Yeah, I mean, let me look at the wording here.
Those 2 things, the height and then the connectivity.
Mark, we can be specific and make it, maximum 42 inches high, and then add the sidewalk connection that was requested over here to Kingston.
Uncovered area too.
Yeah, it's.
And that's not at
Well, there
all
was
what
one of
it
the
is.
elevations, I think, that actually kind of showed or it's kind of.
Defeat the purpose of what you are trying to do. So we're not seeing it the same.
Yeah, it's
But,
not
yeah,
covered.
that's fine.
That section is not covered.
Okay.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I'll move, if it's okay, that we approve the site plan, subject to all of those there except for number 4, which has been satisfied verbally.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? So welcome to Farragut.
Thank you.
Discussion on public, thank you. Discussion and public hearing on a request for a variance from the distance from intersections
Shit, you coming.
and distance between driveway requirements in the driveway and other accessways ordinance in association with the requested right-in, right-out access on Concord Road for the property referenced at 816 Concord Road, parcel 001, tax map 153V, Group B, 0.5 acres zoned RA, Knox County, applicant.
In September on a different part of Concord Road, although that was a commercial access. This is not. As we talked about then, the entire right-of-way of Concord Road is in the town of Farragut, but a lot of the parcels that are on the east side of that corridor are in Knox County. But we do have the authority over curb cuts onto that street. Of course, TDOT's getting ready to, I say this every time we talk about this project, they're getting ready to start someday on the improvements to Concord Road. So the access points, they're trying to pre-plan that ahead of time. And the applicant at this time is just requesting approval for a right-in, right-out residential driveway access onto Concord Road. They have a small rectangular-shaped half-acre parcel that looks challenging to do really anything with, as far as development at least. That was purchased in 1990. And it's zoned residential in the county. So on Concord Road, it's classified as an arterial street, so curb cuts are required to be 400 feet apart. The requested residential driveway would be about 119 feet from the nearest driveway to the north and about 194 feet to the south. So they would be requesting a variance of 281 feet to the north and 206 feet to the south as part of this residential access. Since the property would not have any other legal access, and TDOT has already approved this residential driveway access, the staff would recommend approval of this access, provided that it be clear that this is purely a residential driveway, right in, right out. There's a raised median that goes through that section, and we would also need to make sure that there would be no cut in the median in association with any accesses requested at this point, so would not be compromised in that regard. With those, for those reasons and conditions, access point.
Does anybody have any questions or comments?
I'm not understanding why we have to approve this.
Because we have the entire right-of-way
Oh, okay.
of Concord Road.
All right.
Yeah, it's pretty.
That after TDOT's given their blessing, now we're giving our blessing for a right-in,
They
right-out.
don't own any properties adjacent to this. Otherwise, they'd need to combine and come to a compliant access point, but they don't own any properties around this. So essentially, it would be landlocked without approval of an access.
Right.
I think Sarah Malin used to be Sarah.
Okay.
Do you have any comment to make?
It's John Malin. We live at 12807 Night Heron Drive, 37922. And basically, we're just wanting to get residential access to it because otherwise it will not be able to get access in there. Currently, our homeowners association doesn't allow us to do any sort of gardening in our current subdivision that we live in, and this would be one of those opportunities that we could create a garden so that our daughter would get some exposure on that. And she's also interested in doing some sort of archery, and it's a long piece that we could put a target there and be able to get access. And
No, I understand.
jumping the curb and gutter in any sort of vehicle is not going to be very conducive for her to, feel comfortable going there. But we're hoping to be able to get your approval on this.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that, because I've been scratching my head on that piece of property.
It was a odd-shaped piece that Sarah was able to pick up back in 1990 because there was a lawyer ended up getting it, was willing to buy it.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
No.
Do I have a motion?
Mark, can we make a motion for both of those variances in one? I would think
Yeah, I
that
would,
would be
yeah,
acceptable in this case, wouldn't it?
yeah, I think that's fine.
Well, I'd make a motion to approve the variance for the distance from intersection and the distance from driveway requirements, especially based in light of TDOT's acceptance letter, and make sure that it is a right-in and right-out residential driveway only.
Second?
Second.
And no openings to the raised median. Ed?
No, it'd be right in, right out. They're
Right
not
out.
going to be able to get across that median.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And I'll be careful when I'm driving through there, if I see her out there with her arch.
Yeah. Calming right there.
There you go.
She could set up a lemonade stand during construction. I bet it would go in her.
Item number 13, discussion and public hearing on an ordinance to amend the height regulations for accessory buildings in the R-1 Rural Single Family Residential Zoning District, Town of Farragut applicant.
We discussed this last month as a workshop item. We talked about that there's occasionally been an issue with residential accessory structures and how you measure height, particularly when they've been constructed on a slope. We've had that come up more than once. And in some cases, the requirement that we have for a maximum of 15 feet ends up creating a situation where something's constructed on a slope where the roof pitch is lower and maybe not as attractive or compatible with the roof pitch of the principal structure. So the staff put together Ordinance 1805 to provide for some modifications to accessory building height. In the R1 district, we wanted to kind of limit this. R1 is a larger lot residential district where there's more space and more land area in general, greater setbacks. So the proposed language, would apply to that zoning district, and it would only apply to accessory buildings that are on a lot of record that are at least an acre, where the structure is proposed on a slope that's at least 4:1, and then there would be an additional setback of 2 feet from the typical setback for an accessory building for each foot that the building is greater than 15 feet up to a maximum of 20 feet. So it could be potentially an additional 10 foot of setback. We are proposing to take out some language that was in the original ordinance where it talks about the building having only one finished floor. And looking at this a little bit closer, the height provisions that we're proposing, along with the existing size limitations on accessory buildings, I think adequately addressed with that language in the original ordinance. I don't think it's really necessary. I think that was when we were thinking about increasing it to 25 feet, is when we were thinking about having that finished floor language in there.
We don't still have it in there?
No.
I said up to
This
a maximum of 20
this does
feet.
not solve the applicant that was before us last month's problem. I mean, 20 feet. I think what my understanding at last month's meeting was that they can provide enough separation, i.e. setback from their adjacent property lines. We're okay. I know the maximum in that particular zoning district is 35, but 20 feet still won't allow him to build a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So we're still making him build a little short, squatty cabana.
Well, I don't know. I haven't seen do you want to speak to that, Bob? Or-
I think, at least in my mind, the intent was if
Not
he can
sure.
get 30 feet from the property line, then I'd be okay with him going 30 feet tall. You know, because that's kind of where we're 15 feet tall at a 15-foot setback. So we're saying you can add a foot of height up to obviously a maximum. We don't want somebody going obviously greater than what the maximum is in the R1, which would be 35. But I don't think this solves the issue.
Bob Markley, 424 Heathermore Drive. Yeah, this actually solves the issue. This gives us the additional height to get
To get
the
that
full height of the
18
building.
and 12 witches, the little tall pitched roof on there, you can do that in 20 feet?
Yeah,
Okay.
to get to the middle of it, it makes it work.
Oh, to the middle of it. I'm thinking to the peak.
Right.
Yeah, no,
That's
it's
right,
the
because we
middle.
measure from the
From the
Right.
eave to the
from the
peak.
eave to the peak, and you take the
Yeah.
take the average. Okay.
Yep. So
Take the
it-
half
it
the
works.
distance.
And I think this will solve most people's problem with that issue. So
Okay. No, I'm thinking
good
to
with
the
it.
I'm thinking
Yeah,
to
it
the
was
peak or to the ridge.
midpoint, yeah.
Okay.
To the average grade.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're good with it.
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm good with that.
So when we make this motion, do we need to specifically point out that you're removing the language, the building has only one finished floor, or are we assuming that language has disappeared?
Yeah, because that is in the latest
So we're going
for
to strike
signatures.
from comma. The building has only one finished floor, comma.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Yep.
Do we have any more discussion then?
It solves the problem.
Question or comments?
I'm going to move to approve Resolution PC-18-112, which recommends approval of Ordinance 18-05 with the removal of the language, "The building has only one finished floor."
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Okay, number 14, discussion and public hearing on removing many warehouse facilities from the list of permitted uses in the Regional Commercial District C-2 and retaining many warehouse facilities as a permitted use in the Regional Commercial Retail Warehousing District. Get applicant.
I do have two that have signed up for this as well. We talked about this last month at the workshop session. We have a fair amount of properties that are zoned C2, some that are in gateway portions of the town, and the feeling was that we did not want to see those areas, the future development areas. We wanted to have a little more, I guess, control vision in our land use plan of what we see those gateway areas becoming. As you all know, we had a concept site plan that came before us a couple of months ago for a mini warehouse project at the U.S. Golf location. The intent from the staff certainly was not to exclude that from going forward because they've already came before the town and we all knew their intent and they've actually purchased the property. So we in no way would, from a staff's perspective, want to stop that project. This is basically addressing anything in the future, and that's why I had reached out to Michael about what we were doing, but it really doesn't affect their project. Now, they do need to, move forward, which my understanding is they are, but this would really be more applicable to like the Outlet Drive corridor, which is largely undeveloped, and it's a real important gateway to the north part of the town. So I just wanted to be clear about that because I know that's why they're here and they're wanting to talk about it. But certainly that was not the intent of what we're trying to do in this ordinance, was to prevent them from developing something that they've already clearly conveyed that they would like to do. So with that, I would recommend approval of Resolution PC 1809, which does recommend approval of this ordinance, with the understanding that, provided they move forward, that it would have no impact on that particular site or location.
That needs to go into our motion.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I think it would.
What, to specifically exempt their project?
Yeah, well, it's something
Already
to.
approved.
Oh, yeah.
So why do we have to do an exemption?
Well, it hasn't been approved, but they have come before you with their intent of what they want to do.
They already have vested rights, so they should be grandfathered in.
Well, it should be grandfathered.
Yeah.
They have a,
Well, if it makes it clear, we can make it clear.
yeah, I think it would be more clear to do that,
Okay.
because the concept site plan is really not something we even require, and it doesn't really provide any
But I think if we're going
vesting
back the other way,
per
that's
se.
right.
But
Well,
we
I can
all
promise
know
you-
what their intent
Promise
was.
you, our intent was not to pull the rug out from under you.
Absolutely.
Our intent was, hey, this is not exactly what we want to see in the future on other sites that are with your zoning. So
Yeah,
if we need to address this more officially to give you guys some comfort, I can understand it's probably created some anxiety on your part. So
Yep, that's absolutely.
I'm not sure how to craft that motion, so you may have to.
What Noah
Yeah.
said?
No, I'd like to thank y'all for that. And of course, Ben Mullins, 550 West Main Street, Suite 500, the law firm of France, McCollum, Seymour, no Arthur. That is our concern, because when we were here, it was for discussion purposes. The timing of this and whether or not things have vested or not, I mean, that's a weird intersection that does give lawyers like me heartburn, and my client heartburn, especially after they, spent $2 million in acquiring the property after that happened. So that's where we intend to move forward. I don't know if there's a timetable you have in mind for that, Mark?
Well, I think you could maybe recognize in the motion that you're aware of their project and that it is proceeding and was of this change to the zoning ordinance.
Well, I mean, I would like to see, I'd like to see, in a year or two, if your plans change, I don't think this. So I think we'd like to, be able to see your project move forward.
Yeah, I would
is
say
12
the
months
next
reasonable? I don't know.
2 or 3 months, anyway. I mean,
it's,
I mean, if you could say we're exempt from this ordinance amendment, so long as we submit a site plan approval within so many months and move diligently towards it, because, in order to have a vested right, there has to be some level of approval somewhere, and just recognizing us doesn't give us that comfort that we would prefer.
if we made it getting your a fully engineered site plan in by the end of the calendar year 2018, is that something that you guys would be comfortable with?
Can we put in the motion, and I don't know who's going to make the motion.
that or you could,
You're speaking up. I can hear you're already thinking about it.
Can we put in the motion that the reason we're before this rezoning, because I want to make that clear so the next person comes along and says, well,
Right.
they're in our, I just want to make sure that we're not, there's we're given the exemption because they had proceeded forward with these plans before we made this ordinance change.
They proceeded in good faith based on what they heard at our meeting.
Yes.
Right.
And I think they would have, I'm not a lawyer, but some strong recourse.
Oh, absolutely.
If they're already out that much money.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, they purchased a piece of property based upon, feedback from this board.
Yeah.
So
Does there need to be a reasonable time limit on
Yes.
this exemption?
just think this would be good for you guys to eliminate your competition.
We've done that.
So it's a double-edged sword here, so it's not all bad.
Well, we're fulfilling your dream. You said that if there was one piece of property that you wanted self-storage on, this would be the one.
Well, I'm not sure that's exactly the dream, but
Need to be in the motion.
yeah, I'm not willing to go on the record for that. But nevertheless, we welcome you to the town. We want your project to work, and our town administrator in the back, do you have a thought about how we should craft a motion on this? You're as close to Tom Hale as we got tonight.
I think if you want to give it 6 months to put some kind of plans forward, be specific about this property.
Yeah.
Right. And a specific,
U.S. golf site.
specific amount of time.
I can pull the address up on KGIS or give a parcel ID number.
775.
Yes, 11775 Snyder Road,
Yeah.
formerly the U.S. Golf
So
property.
you're talking about getting a site plan approval within 6 months?
Yes.
Okay.
Site plan submittal. I mean, you kind of dictate
yeah.
the approval off of that. I will have the submittal in.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
fair enough.
But it needs to be a full engineering package. I mean, you
Yeah,
can't
they
do-
have a local engineer that's working on it. Mine
I think
is
Billy said.
Billy.
it's
Still working
tip-
on it.
Billy Fulgham's working on it?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think he said you're typically about a 95% set of plans when they come in.
Okay.
Okay, so we can address the address, the fact that, that it was clearly known that they were doing that prior to the development of this ordinance, and then that they would have 6 months to submit a site plan, a full site plan.
Well, I'd say end of calendar year.
Well, but if something should come up in the future, end of calendar year,
So that's more of a thing. I guess what I'm trying to say is if you guys abandon the project or do something else, obviously we'd like to envelope this into this change.
Promise you, I'm not walking away from
Right.
$2 million of a piece of dirt.
May 17 meeting.
In this motion, I'm kind of,
I've got the word pre-existing, but I don't.
try this and see what you guys think here.
Okay. Yeah, I like that one too.
Well, I'm not sure about the exempt.
I don't like the exempt.
I don't like exempt either.
Exclude.
Exclude.
You used the word exclude. I said due to pre-existing, and I got lost after that.
We just
Pre-existing review.
if it's worthwhile, it
We'll
has
just
been
say
in
with
the motion.
clarification that property is not subject to this ordinance.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Well, not really. You
That's-
can't
I gotta
do
be careful
that.
about that.
Subject to the submission.
Let me try this and see what you guys think. I'm gonna motion to approve removing mini warehouse facilities from the list of permitted uses in the regional C2 zoning district, and retaining mini warehouse facilities as permitted use in the regional commercial retail/warehousing C2-RW zoning district, excluding for up to 6 months from tonight the property at 11775 Snyder Road, formerly known as US Golf, due to the fact that they have submitted and had a concept plan informally approved by this body previously.
I'll second that.
Amen.
With that,
good.
you think you
If you'll put that it was,
because I did say it formal, because I don't think you did not have a formal approval, but nevertheless, we're giving you a formal exclusion tonight.
so long as we get our plans submitted within 6 months and move forward with the development.
Yes. Now, obviously, if you submit your plans in 6 months and you don't do anything, then your plans are going to sunset in probably a year anyway, and you'd have to start over again. So I guess what I'm saying is you could submit this year, and if you choose not to move forward, do keep in mind that, I mean, you could run out of clock. Just like any developer on any project in the town would run out of clock and have to resubmit.
And we understand that, but our intent is when we
Right.
submit, we'll be working forward on all these issues to
After this
get it
date.
done. So.
Our intent is within 30 days of building permits, we're clearing. Our intent is within 4 to 6 months from today.
I suspect you probably want to do it in the dry weather of the fall,
Yes,
so.
we're moving.
Right.
We're moving dirt, and you all have a new income stream of taxes coming in.
We don't.
We hope so. If you can figure out a way to produce some sales tax for us, we'll be excited.
Well, if I can produce it in 6 months, I'll be really excited.
Okay.
Just to clarify, there wasn't an informal
Yeah.
approval.
Tell us who you are.
I'm
We
sorry,
haven't seen you
David
before.
Smoke, Town Administrator here at the Town of Farragut. It wasn't an informal approval, but I would say informal review of their plans. So it's a big, I know they're concerned about the approval since you did not approve anything last time.
I will amend my motion to strike approval and insert review.
We're comfortable so long as the motion going forward then continues to exclude our property for a period of 6 months so we can get our site plans in the process.
Mark, you're going to have to take that language and reinsert it into our packages for the next few months as we work through this.
I think that's fine. That was certainly the intent of everybody here, was not to pull the rug out from under you.
Right.
In effect.
Whoever second of mine will need to amend their second because my motion changed. And then I can't remember if we,
So I second your amendment.
yes. And then we can take,
Vote on the
vote.
whole thing.
right. Because my vote encompassed
Vote
everything.
on the amendment first, then.
Well, no, actually, my motion is the entire thing.
Okay.
I put it all together in one
Okay,
package so we
that's
can go
fine.
home.
Move for
Yeah.
approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Welcome to the town of Farragut.
Thank you. We'll see you all soon.
Aren't you glad you had to sit through all of that?
Yes.
For $2 million,
Yeah, no,
Well, that's true.
Due on a Thursday night, right?
seconded it, you know. Oh, you
Discussion
did.
and public
Thank you,
hearing on
appreciate it.
removing the general commercial storage district CS-1, town of Farragut applicant.
Hold on 1 minute here. Oh, thank you. Okay.
Well, this is a different one. We're gonna strike the entire zoning district.
Yeah, this is basically something we talked about last month too, and we don't have any properties or projects that have actually come to fruition with this zoning district. It's been a zoning district that was created a number of years ago for a project that was envisioned on Concord Road at one time, but it never came to fruition, and we haven't had any requests since then for this. It's also in the gateway portion of the town, and so we probably see a different plan of development for that corridor than having this type of use. So that's why we're recommending to
So I
get
think
rid
before
of
it was
that.
some sort of dry storage for boats.
Yeah, it
is
was.
what it was.
Yeah, yeah.
I move to approve Resolution PC-18-08, which recommends approval of ordinance 18-07.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approval of utilities.
None.
This time.
None.
The May 17, 2018 meeting of the Farragut Municipal Planning Commission
One thing today.
is closed.
Get you a gavel, Miss Rita. That's what you need.
Maybe I just haven't been down that section.